Chapter 670. What kind of joke was this? How could he touch Hell's book of life and death? That was a huge matter that concerned reincarnation. A mighty and unyielding little king of hell like him would not compromise so easily. But this great demon actually cut off his beloved black hair. He even said that if he did not give him the book of life and death, he would shave him bald. Although he was young, he still had a basic sense of honor and disgrace. So, he gave the book of life and death to the great demon. Ahem. It was not that he was afraid of him. The main thing was that it would be a waste of resources to match his handsome looks with a bald head. However, the person named Hellion Vivian did not appear in the book of life and death. There were only 3 kinds of people that were not recorded by Hell. One was a demon, one was a god, and the last was a variable. Things like variables were indeed beyond Hell's control. However, he remembered that not long after, the exorcists had attracted the fire of heaven and earth, and sealed this great demon with their flesh and blood. Wasn't his primordial spirit completely destroyed? Why did he come back now? The little king of hell thought for a while, but before he could figure it out, the man grabbed him by the collar from behind. The Reapers, this is bad. You haven't answered me. Which hand do you not want anymore? Why did you run away? Didn't you want someone to kiss the back of your hand? Do you need me to knock off both your hands personally? Bailey Jiaju held the son of the king of hell, as if he was holding a little chick. He stared at him coldly with a faint smile on his face. Or, do you want me to cut off all your hair? The king of hell's son quickly covered his head and said in a serious tone. Can't we discuss this peacefully? I have a family now. I can't just shave off my head. Everyone. This child was only 5 years old. He had a family at such a young age. Elder Suwu finally regained his senses. He looked at Hellion Vivian and suddenly laughed. Ha ha ha, third princess consort. Where is the judge you were talking about? Are you thinking of using a little brat to deal with us? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and did not say anything. She only smiled meaningfully. The little king of hell laughed coldly. His collar was still being held by Beligaju. His little face was vicious and evil. Who are you calling a little brat? Elder Suwu's mouth was originally open, was now frozen. He could not spit a single word was he was saying. Apart from that, his shadow was not under his control was moving towards the little boy. Zhongjingwen Run was the first person to notice the abnormality in Elder Suwu. He did not understand why he could feel an overwhelming amount of yin qi in such a short period of time. It was so dense that it was more suffocating than the presence of 10 judges. Of course, He was not the only one who was affected. All the artifacts in the exorcist's hands were making uneasy noises. It was as if they had encountered an unprecedented crisis. All of them wanted to escape. The exorcists looked at each other in panic. What made them even more frightened was that the person who caused this change was actually the little boy standing opposite them. Idiot! The little king of hell bared his canine teeth. He was obviously a child, but his innate yin energy was enough to send chills down everyone's spine. Elder Suwu did not expect that he would be suppressed by a child to the point where he could not move an inch. At this moment, Zhongjingwen Run had already sensed that something was wrong. He asked with difficulty, Who are you? Me. The little king of hell did not want to act cool, because he was being held by someone. He blew at the black hair in front of his forehead and laughed bloodthirstily. You'll know who I am when you're dead. No, Little Highness, you can't do anything. This is the human world. There are rules. If you kill someone, the great king of hell will make sure that you're not allowed to step foot in the human world for the rest of your life. When the Reapers saw that the situation was getting worse, they all jumped out. However, they did not dare to go near their little king of hell. With the great demon around, it was too scary. Due to the presence of so many Reapers, the temperature in the main hall had dropped to the freezing point. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this scene. The exorcists' hearts were about to jump out of their chests. There were so many Reapers. And, what did they just call the little boy? Little Highness. Zhongjingwen Ren's expression changed as well. He was in disbelief. His gaze landed on the little boy's tiger-headed hat with the word, Yin written on it. He felt as if his soul was no longer his own. You, you, you. What is your relationship with the King of Hell? My father. The little King of Hell's tone was very calm. He lifted his little face and felt that he was especially cool after he said this sentence. He could finally compare his father with others. This feeling was really good. When Zongjing Wenrun heard the words father, he could no longer hold the peachwood sword in his hand. With a loud thud, he took a few steps back and fell back into his seat. He still could not believe it. How is this possible? This is impossible. Why is it impossible? The little King of Hell snorted coldly. Is it strange for me to come to the human world? I'm used to it. As he spoke, he lifted his head and looked at Hellion Vivian. Woman, can you ask your man to put me down first? If you carry me like this, I won't be able to pose properly. Hellion Vivian was speechless. You're still thinking about posing properly at this time? That's enough. However, when the exorcists heard the little King of Hell's words, they were so shocked that they could not utter a single word. In other words, Hellion Vivian did summon something, but she did not summon a judge. Instead, she summoned the King of Hell's son. The exorcists did not dare to imagine how much spiritual energy was required to achieve this. At this moment, there was only one thought in their minds, and that was regret. That's right. They regretted that they had been so blind. They even regretted following the emissary to the War Dragon dynasty for the competition. Even Zongjing Wenrun had to obediently greet Hellion Vivian as Great Master, let alone the exorcists. In the demon world of exorcists, no one except for the members of the exorcist tribe would be able to achieve such a shocking level of cultivation. The other party had won this competition right from the start, yet they were still acting like clowns, acting all high and mighty. When the exorcists recalled their attitude at the beginning, they wished that they could find a hole in the ground and hide in it. Wu Jing looked at the exorcist's expressions and felt delighted. He laughed out loud. So we've won? Of course. Lu Yu looked very calm, but he could not hide the excitement in his voice. The Princess Consort has summoned the King of Hell's son. I believe that this time, no one will nitpick and laugh at our Princess Consort for not knowing how to exorcise demons. Zongjing Wenrun was speechless. He felt as if he had been punched in the face. He could not bring himself to say anything about the burning and swollen pain. Chapter 671. The difference was too great. Compared to Hellion Vivian, his spiritual energy and Dao techniques were far too inferior to his opponents. Zongjing Wenrun held his forehead with one hand and refused to look up. He could clearly feel the gazes of the people around him. It made it difficult for him to control his expression. He was like a self-righteous clown who had danced in front of the experts for a long time only to be mocked. The crushing victory caused the entire hall to erupt in excitement. Zongjing Yu'er opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she was stopped by an exorcist. However, she was stopped by the exorcist at the side. Princess, you should save it. Hellion Weiwei is better in terms of appearance. In terms of strength, not only can she suppress you, but she can also suppress the crown prince. Anyone would choose her. Not to mention that she is the legitimate princess consort of the third prince. It's too embarrassing for you to be in such a hurry and pick on Hellion Weiwei's faults. Zongjing Yu'er's mouth froze when she heard the exorcist's words. Bai Yu, get your facts straight. You are from the Xianyuan Kingdom, not the War Dragon Empire. Do you know what you are saying? Who do you think you are talking to? Of course I know who I am talking to. Your Highness, you are the princess of the Xianyuan Kingdom. It's fine that you were rejected once, but you don't know what's good for you. You are not only embarrassing yourself, but also the people of the Xianyuan Kingdom. In the Xianyuan Kingdom, exorcists were of high status. The more powerful an exorcist was, the more arrogant they were. Bai Yu was such a person. Zongjing Yu'er did not expect to be criticized by her own people. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. This was because the exorcists standing next to her were from other countries. They looked at her with obvious contempt and mockery. It was as if she was not qualified to be a princess. Zongjing Yu'er's face was burning, and she felt as if her heart was being scalded. She had never been treated like this before. Zongjing Yu'er could not help but look at the emissary from the Huangzi nation. It was obvious that she wanted him to speak up for her. However, when Lord Wang saw that even the Xianyuan dynasty's own exorcist was not interested in their princess, he was immediately rendered speechless. He thought about the long term. Since the War Dragon dynasty had won, the War Dragon dynasty had no choice but to accept the War Dragon dynasty. Then the siege plan would be useless. As long as they could immediately extricate themselves, they would leave the capital the next day. The third prince wouldn't do anything to them. After all, no country would violently attack their envoys. As long as they did not continue to provoke the third prince, they would be fine. This was also why Lord Wang agreed to the encirclement plan. At the very least, they would lose. However, this was not the end, because at this time, Nangong Lai, who was wearing a priest's robe, walked in from outside the hall. His pair of flirtatious peach blossom eyes glanced around the hall, and then met Beligaju's eyes. He smiled and said, "It seems that everything is done here. It just so happens that my side is also done. The things you asked me to do are almost done. There should be news soon." Beligaju didn't reply, and just nodded his head casually. The smart Hellion Vivian immediately smelled the scent of a conspiracy. Could it be that His Highness did something again? The exorcists still did not understand what Nangong Lai meant. However, they also found it strange that he only appeared now. After all, if he had the help of a priest, they would not have underestimated the War Dragon Empire. However, just as Nangong Lai's voice fell, 3 people hurriedly ran in from outside the hall. These 3 people were wearing the military uniforms of different countries. Their collars were wet with sweat, and their faces were full of defeat. "Your Highness." "Sir." "Bad news." Zongjing Wenrun looked at the soldier kneeling in front of him and said angrily, "Stand up and tell me properly. What's wrong with that?" The soldier answered and then reported with a trembling voice, "Xian City. Xian City is under siege. The king has asked the crown prince to return to the country immediately to preside over the war." "What did you say?" Zongjing Wenrun couldn't believe his ears. He stood up abruptly, and his eyes were so wide open that they looked like they could eat a person alive. Xian City was the capital of the Xianyuan kingdom. Everyone knew what it meant for Xian City to be under siege. The soldiers of the other 2 countries also reported the same news. Their capital cities were also besieged in one night. "Who is it? Which army would?" Lord Wang was halfway through his sentence when he abruptly turned to look at Bailey Jiaju. "It's you?" Bailey Jiaju did not deny it. He casually tossed the son of the king of hell aside and adjusted his sleeves slowly. "Yes." Just a single word of "Third prince, do you know that diplomatic relations between countries are not supposed to kill the envoys?" Lord Wang said with a heavy tone. However, Bailey Jiaju's tone was very light and slightly mocked. "Of course I know. That's why I didn't do anything to you. However, you are more stupid than I thought. Your border is even more pitiful and vulnerable." Beligaju did not finish his sentence completely, but everyone present understood what he meant. "Since I can't do anything to you, I'll just attack your capitals directly. I'll collect the interest." When Lord Wang heard this, his legs turned to jelly. This is too scary. Beligaju is too scary. They originally thought that with the joint attack of the 3 countries, they would be able to catch this new prince off guard. However, they were the ones who were caught off guard. This man took advantage of the fact that they were focused on the exorcism competition and sent his soldiers to attack. No one would have thought that he would do such a thing. No one would have expected that he would do such a thing. He didn't know about the other empires. But when His Majesty heard that he had brought the exorcists to the capital, he knew that they would win. That was why he didn't concentrate all his troops on the southern border. This way, there would be a large gap in the northern border, which could easily become a breakthrough. So, this man had planned everything from the very beginning. Lu Yu didn't understand what was going on. Wu Jing, on the other hand, heard it clearly. His eyes were filled with excitement. "Why didn't I think of it? The borders, the borders. These people have been thinking of how to take advantage of us. They all have their troops pointed at our capital, so the other side will definitely be empty. If we attack now, we can definitely take down the city. Really, it's too beautiful. His Highness is so good at luring the enemy into the trap and catching the turtle in the trap." Even if Lu Yu didn't understand at first, he understood after hearing Wu Jing's words. The other party wanted to force His Highness into a marriage alliance, thinking that this was the only way for His Highness. However, they never expected that His Highness had already taken down their countries while they were being complacent. Chapter 672. All the officials present looked at Beligaju in disbelief. The two old officials who had knelt down and begged Beligaju for a marriage alliance widened their eyes in disbelief. Zongjing Wenrun froze in place. After a while he regained his composure. His face was ashen. They had lost. They had completely lost. Zongjing Yuer's face turned pale when she heard the news. "Brother, what should we do now?" "Go back immediately." Zongjing Wenrun lowered his voice. "We are now the emissaries. There is an agreement between the four countries. Even if there is a war, the emissaries are not to be killed." Zongjing Yuer nodded. Her eyes were in a daze and her hair was in a mess. She thought about how she had come in a glamorous manner. Now she was going back like a stray dog that was being chased. Zongjing Wenrun was right. No one in the War Dragon dynasty would do anything to them. However, once they entered the Xianyuan dynasty, they would be hunted down like never before. It was undeniable that Beligaju was extremely ruthless. Master Su Wu regretted provoking such a man the most. He fell to the ground in a daze. He was no longer thinking about winning or losing. All he wanted was to stay alive. The young king of hell was still staring at him. Suddenly he frowned and said, "Wait a minute. Something is not right." "What is not right?" Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows when she saw him suddenly become serious. The son of the king of hell reached out his hand, and a black notebook appeared in his palm. He flipped through 2 pages, and finally stopped at the word nihility. He frowned and said, "Nihility Changkong. He was born for 14 years, and has finally reached the end of his 95th year. This old man should have died a few months ago. Why is he still alive?" After hearing Little King of Hell's words, the reapers standing at the side finally noticed that the light above Elder Su Wu's head had indeed been extinguished. The old man often said that when a person died, the light would go out. It was not without basis. Every person was a living being, and the top of their head would emit a white light. Of course, this kind of light could not be seen by humans, nor could demons. Only the reapers, the king of hell, who was in charge of the underworld, could sense it. If the light was still on, it meant that the person was still alive. If the light was extinguished, it meant that the person was about to die. Once the light was extinguished, the person would immediately stop breathing. The reapers would also receive the signal, and could immediately take away the person's soul from his body. This was because he was already a dead spirit, and the reapers would be in charge of the underworld. But now, this Elder Su Wu was clearly a dead spirit, yet he had not been detected by the reaper. He could even stay safely in his body. If it were not for the Little King of Hell's careful observation, he would not have noticed anything strange. What the hell is going on? The Little King of Hell could not accept the fact that such a huge mistake could be made in a place where he was. His father had said that as long as he did a good job, he would be allowed to meet Little Hook in hell. Now that there was a dead spirit who didn't go to the underworld, he could even disguise himself as a living creature and live freely in the human world. If his father found out about this, he was afraid that he would never be able to see his sweetheart again. When the Little King of Hell thought of this, he casually grabbed a reaper, grabbed him by the collar, and shook him forcefully. "Did you do this on purpose?" You didn't want me to meet Little Hook on purpose. That's why you made such a huge mistake." Cough. "Your Highness, we the reapers are all acting according to the orders given by the High Judge. As for how this Elder Su Wu managed to avoid us, we'll have to ask the High Judge." The reaper's face was already green, but after being pulled by the Little King of Hell, it turned even greener. The Little King of Hell did not beat around the bush. He said in a deep voice, "Judge, come out." In the next moment, the judge, dressed in long robes, hovered in midair and looked at the Little King of Hell respectfully. "Your Highness, is there something you need from this humble official? What's the matter with this person?" The Little King of Hell pointed at Elder Su Wu and asked. The judge glanced at him and furrowed his brows deeply. This humble official doesn't know either. However, based on what we've found so far, it should be related to the aura of resentment in the capital city. Other than this dead spirit, there are also some evil spirits that have been infected with the aura of resentment. Lord Casso and Lord Bing are currently cleaning up the infected spirits. These evil spirits cannot enter the underworld. We must find them in the human world and get rid of them quickly. Otherwise, once the infected spirits enter the underworld, it will cause a drastic change in all the spirits. When that happens, not only will the human world be destroyed, even the underworld's hall of reincarnation will be destroyed. After the little king of hell heard this, the tiger hat on his head moved, and his little face became serious. The source of the infection is in the human world? That's right. However, we can't find out what's wrong. Lord Casso has asked Your Highness to return first. You're still young, and the human world is not safe. He's afraid that you'll be infected by the vengeful spirits. The judge spoke in a serious tone but kept his voice low. It was obvious that he did not want unnecessary people to know about this. However, this did not escape the ears of Beligaju and Hellion Vivian. The two of them looked at each other, and then turned to look at Elder Su Wu. The crowd did not know what the little king of hell said to the judge. They only heard the little king of hell say that Elder Su Wu was dead. Their faces were filled with fear. If Elder Su Wu was dead, then who was the person standing in front of them? The exorcists from the Xianyuan dynasty were the first to act. The yellow talismans in their hands were erected, and they looked at Elder Su Wu warily. The envoys from Huangzi country were also in a mess. Elder Su Wu was like an old fox. He turned his eyes and tried to escape. However, as soon as he raised his foot, a wolfhound caught the corner of his shirt with its mouth. The wolfhound had not been here just a moment ago. It had suddenly leaped out of the fog and opened its mouth at Elder Su Wu. Then, it used its fangs to drag Elder Su Wu away. Elder Su Wu's soul was completely detached from his physical body. His physical body transformed into a pool of black water in an instant. The soul's eyes glowed with an unusual red light. He was like a malicious spirit, smiling eerily as he tried to pounce on the crowd. The wolfhound did not give him any chance to infect the others. It opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. When the crowd saw this, they were so frightened that their hearts trembled. Too many things had happened that day. They could not even react in time. The ministers of the War Dragon Empire were undoubtedly excited. However, the envoys from the Xianyuan dynasty felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Their elder had died a long time ago and had turned into an evil spirit. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the entire Xianyuan dynasty. Chapter 673. Zhongxing Wenrun had lost all of his arrogance as he stared blankly at the scene before him. He looked extremely pathetic. The little king of hell stroked his chin and narrowed his amber eyes. He asked Hellion Vivian, "Did you see his eyes just now?" "Red." As Hellion Vivian spoke, she waved her hand at the German shepherd. "Little Black, come here." The German shepherd shook its head and ran over. It stood on the left side of Hellion Vivian. The little king of hell looked at the German shepherd and muttered to himself, "That's the sign of being infected by a soul. Souls that have been infected by resentment cannot enter the underworld. Even the reapers of hell have no way to destroy them. You exorcists have a way, but from the looks of it, the soul infection is too serious. Father will definitely order the underworld to be sealed off in order to protect the clean souls in the underworld. When that happens, I'm afraid that even the path of reincarnation cannot be used. All unborn babies will become soulless idiots." "Are you saying that no matter who is pregnant with a child, they will become a retard when they are born?" Hellion Vivian frowned. The little king of hell nodded and snapped his fingers. He opened the black notebook and said seriously, "The path of reincarnation prevents dead souls from entering the underworld and living souls from leaving the underworld. It is even more impossible for them to be reincarnated into a human stomach. Even if a child is born, it will only be an empty shell. However, if the underworld is not sealed off, it will be even more terrifying. The human race will become extinct. You have seen the infected souls just now. They cannot enter the path of reincarnation. If one of these souls that have been infected by resentment enters the underworld, It will be equivalent to releasing a virus into the human race. The souls in the underworld will infect one another. When that happens, no one can hope to be human again. And once the underworld is closed, it will have to wait for 5 years before it reopens. This is the law of the world, and no one can change it. We have to think of a way to find the source of the infection before Old Father returns and resolve this situation. Only then can we prevent him from deciding to close the underworld. 5 years? 5 years might be a long time for the souls in the underworld. But for humans, how many 5 years could there be in a lifetime? Since the path of reincarnation had been closed for 5 years, it meant that not a single child would be born within the next 5 years. Hellion Vivian's frown deepened. As a human, she naturally couldn't accept the current situation. Since he couldn't accept it, he had to think of a way to change it. You just said the source of the infection? Where? Hellion Vivian raised the corner of her mouth and guessed. The human world? The little king of hell nodded. My people are still looking for the exact location, but there aren't many people in the underworld who can sense the difference between the mortal world and the human world. Other than Ice and the others, only my father and I can. I'm going to look for the source. You and your people are in charge of the management of the netherworld. Don't let any infected soul into the netherworld. Hellion Wei Wei's voice interrupted him calmly. What do you think? Would they cooperate? Little King of Hell nodded. Of course it's good to have help, but we don't have much time left. You have to hurry. I'll think of a way to delay my father. 5 days, we only have 5 days. All right. Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and nodded. Little King of Hell raised his eyebrows. Are you sure 5 days is enough? Yes. Generally speaking, resentment is used to affect the seal. Since the Divine Exorcist seal is in the capital, the source of the infection must be in the capital as well. The 2 exorcists were only possessed by malicious spirits when they arrived in the capital. However, Elder Su Wu is a little strange. You said that he should have died a few months ago. How did he survive until now? Hellion Vivian's thoughts were very dense. Little King of Hell smiled evilly. If I was still doubting whether we should cooperate earlier, I can now confirm that you're very suitable to investigate the source of the infection. I also think that the source of the infection is in the capital. As for that elder, it's not strange at all. Since someone has set their sights on the Divine Exorcist seal, it must have been planned from the beginning. Someone must have tampered with the elder's body. I got it. Hellion Vivian could roughly guess who that person was. Help me check Jing Wushuang's Book of Life and Death. I want to know who this person is. Jing Wushuang? Little King of Hell's ears twitched as he flipped through the pages. Why does this name sound so familiar? I found it. The guardian of the exorcising tribe. I hate the exorcising tribe the most. Except for the Pei family, none of the others are stable. On the contrary, Hellion Wei Wei was rather calm. Help me to see when he can die. Little King of Hell. He can't die. The guardians of the exorcising tribe were born to protect the right path of heaven and earth. As long as the right path of heaven and earth exists, he won't die. Protect the right path of heaven and earth? Hellion Vivian did not comment on these words. Can the underworld assign this person a position or something? Little King of Hell shook his head. The underworld only cares about the dead, not the living. To put it bluntly, what can the underworld do? Hellion Vivian was speechless. Little King of Hell was very proud. Does killing count? Hellion Vivian. But how was the process? The 2 of them finally finalized the cooperation plan. After Hellion Vivian finished speaking, she turned around and saw Baligaju looking at her. Behind him, the officials were kneeling. At this time, he had already dealt with everything that needed to be dealt with. He casually threw the blood-stained fur robe to the eunuch who was waiting at the side. The originally elegant and noble temperament was immediately replaced by a carefree and unruly calmness. His deep black eyes exuded a different kind of charm. Come over when you're done talking. Staying with the people of the underworld all the time will make one stupid. When Little King of Hell heard this, he quickly turned his head to Hellion Vivian and said, If you really want to find the source, it's best not to bring this great demon. Once he appears, even ghosts will be scared away, not to mention people. No, I can help him hide his aura. Hellion Vivian had long noticed the subtlety of this. When Little King of Hell heard this, he was immediately puzzled. When he was summoned, he did not feel any threat. So why did the great demon suddenly appear? So it turned out that he was using the contract as a cover. How cunning! Then bring him along. Bring him along, and we can deal with anyone. Little King of Hell paused for a moment, then said, "But the most important thing now is to find the source of the infection. If we can't find the source, everything will be in vain. The culprit of this incident may be Jing Wushuang, but the source of the infection may not necessarily be him. He can only be considered a spellcaster. We have to find out who exactly he did something to." Chapter 674. The investigation of the source could not wait. After all, 5 days was not a long time. After sending away the Little King of Hell, Hellion Vivian summoned the Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs. The fastest way to know if there was anything strange in the capital was to find out where the people died. No one could think of this. However, it was not difficult for Hellion Vivian. The Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs did not expect the third princess consort to be interested in this. He first looked at Beligaju. After seeing him nod, he handed over the recent memorials. Hellion Weiwei flipped back and forth, and suddenly stopped at a place. Missing for 2 days in a row. What's going on? The Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs took a look, and did not pay much attention to it. We are investigating this case. There shouldn't be anything serious. The person who reported the case was a night watchman. When he passed by the alley, he heard someone screaming for help. When he went to take a look, there was nothing. However, from the looks of it, he might have heard wrongly. But people did go missing that day, didn't they? Hellion Vivian laughed softly. Officially, you don't have to be nervous. Just tell me everything you know. Don't hide anything. Everything can be discussed. The Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, and stole a glance at Beligaju. He then lowered his voice and said, "After the night watchman reported the case, the subordinates went to take a look. Everything was normal. There was no sign of struggle at the alley. Coincidentally, there was also a couple arguing. I thought that the night watchman had heard wrongly. He also said that he drank some wine at night, and might not have heard clearly. Unexpectedly, the next day, someone reported that their daughter, who was about to get married, had gone missing. Then on the third day, someone reported that someone from their family had gone missing." Hellion Weiwei took over his words and explained clearly. Moreover, these girls had been to the alley before they went missing, so they were also residents of that area, right? The Minister of Appointments was stunned for a moment, and did not know how to react. How did Princess Consort know? Although it was written on the memorial that someone had gone missing, it was not written in such detail. Normally speaking, if the girls hadn't been to that alley, you wouldn't have purposely brought up the night watchman's report. As for why the missing people were civilians from that area, Hellion Vivian lazily picked up the booklet in her hand. Since the missing people were all young girls who were about to be married, then they had to limit their range of activity. Even normal civilians wouldn't wander too far, so they should be staying around that alley. When the Minister of Personnel heard Hellion Vivian's analysis, his eyes widened in shock. He looked at Hellion Vivian, then at Beligaju. That expression seemed to be saying, "Your Highness, where did you find such a woman who is so good at handling cases?" If the third princess consort went to the Ministry of Personnel, then wouldn't the old cases that were under his control be solved? Hellion Vivian did not look at the Minister of Personnel's sparkling eyes. She only tapped her fingers on the table and continued. "Since there are similarities, then it's easy to investigate. You can hand this case to me, but you must keep it a secret. The Ministry of Personnel can investigate however you want. Don't tell anyone about my involvement, and don't make things easy for me. His Highness, and I will go there personally. The soldiers in the Ministry of Personnel have never seen me or His Highness before. When we meet there, officially must act natural and not give yourself away." His Highness is going too. Officially was a little worried. Right now in the Imperial Court, he wanted to say that it was not suitable for His Highness to go out of the palace, because of the turmoil in the imperial court. However, His Highness had just beaten up the 3 countries' envoys, so the people at the border were very obedient. Now, they could not wait to send gifts to the War Dragon dynasty, so that His Highness would spare them. They had even pleaded with the retired emperor. After today, the ministers of the various departments did not dare to say anything in front of His Highness. The entire imperial court was very peaceful, so there was no reason to stop His Highness from going incognito. But won't it be too dangerous for His Highness to go? Why don't this old official give him a heads up? Officially was really worried that something would happen to Beligaju. If something happened to him, even if he lost his life, it would not be enough to fill the hole. Hellion Vivian smiled. Officially, who do you think can beat His Highness in a fight? The official of the Ministry of Personnel was at a loss for words. Indeed, there was no one. His Highness's martial strength had always been off the charts. Under normal circumstances, if someone provoked him, he would directly go to see the King of Hell. Hellion Weiwei curled her lips and stood up. The official of the Ministry of Personnel glanced at His Highness's indifferent and noble side profile, and knew that he had no say in this matter. However, it was a relief for him that the 3rd Princess Consort personally came to investigate this case. With his many years of experience, he knew that a missing persons case was not that easy to investigate. The most important thing in a missing persons case was time. Once more than a day and a night had passed, it would be extremely difficult to find the missing person. It had already been 4 days, and those missing people were still nowhere to be found. Hellion Vivian was naturally aware of this. That night, she changed into a commoner's outfit and planned to leave the palace. However, when she turned around, she saw that His Highness was still sitting elegantly in the same place. His long legs were half crossed, and he was wearing a fur coat as he leisurely flipped through the book in his hand. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "You're not going?" His Highness was not worried about her leaving the palace alone? How strange. Bailey Jiaju put down the book in his hand and looked at her with a look of disbelief. He reached out and grabbed Hellion Weiwei's wrist, gently pulled her into his arms. His voice was low and pleasant to hear as he habitually ordered, "Finish your meal before you go out." "Oh." Hellion Vivian allowed him to hold her hand and yawned lazily. "Speaking of dinner, I seem to have eaten a lot recently. Do you think I'm fatter than before?" Beligage's thin lips curved up, and his large palm covered her softness from behind. Then a slightly warm breath floated over. "You're indeed fatter." "You." Hellion Vivian was sitting in his arms and had nowhere to hide. Her heart and pulse throbbed a little. Beligaju did not let her go. His slender fingers pinched her body, and his soft lips fell from behind her ear and kissed her neck again and again. Hellion Vivian's fingers trembled as she pressed down on his hand. Her breathing was chaotic as she tried to stop him. Not only did Beligaju not stop, but he also increased his strength. There was a little pain, but more than that, it made her whole body go soft and numb. Chapter 675. Hellion Vivian furrowed her brows and bit her lip. The corners of her eyes started to turn red. "Don't." That kind of low voice made the light in Bailey Jiaju's eyes even dimmer. His kiss also became overbearing and valiant. Under his burning body temperature, Hellion Vivian felt like she was about to be burned by his heat. She could faintly hear him say in her ear, "Can those beautiful men you dream of make you this happy, huh?" Hellion Vivian's scalp went numb. Her entire body was hot from being rubbed by him. No matter how slow she was, she understood that a certain highness was looking for her to settle accounts. She had just said it casually at that time. Why did he still remember it now? As if he saw through her thoughts, Beligaju said indifferently, "Who told this highness to be petty, vengeful, and inhumane?" Hellion Vivian. "Don't let this highness hear that you have any thoughts of leaving this highness in the future." Beligage's large palm pressed down and kissed her softness through her clothes. "Otherwise, this highness will really make it so that you can't get out of bed." Even so, Hellion Vivian's entire body trembled. All of her strength seemed to have been sucked out. Her face was flushed red, and she slowly gasped for breath. The main culprit had a noble look on his face. His fingers slid down her curves and his thin lips pressed against hers. "Did you hear that?" A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Helene Vivian still understood the principle of not fighting when the odds were against her. She blinked her eyes. Beligaju finally let go of his hand in satisfaction. Very good. Let's go and eat. Helene Vivian. Wait, did he just finish teaching her? She still had a lot to say, okay? She felt that a certain highness had to be taught a lesson. She was a woman of principle. She couldn't get physical with her every time she was threatened. I asked the Imperial Kitchen to make your favorite spicy crab and tendon meat. Beligaju tidied up his outer clothes. Seeing that Helene Vivian was still looking at him, he raised his handsome eyebrows. What? You still want to continue? Helene Vivian quickly shook her head and sat down with her small rice bowl. She had been wanting to eat tendons for a long time. She would leave the education for next time. Dinner was served very quickly. With Beligaju's instructions, the efficiency of the Imperial Kitchen was naturally much higher. The tendon meat was first boiled in water, and when it retained its chewiness, it was quickly taken out. Then it was stir-fried in a hot oil pan. There was no need to add any seasoning when it was stir-frying. After it was taken out of the pan, it was sprinkled with sauce, and the hot aroma naturally wafted out. When Helene Vivian bit into the first piece, she felt blessed. The fragrance lingered in her mouth, and the meat was full of flavor. The strange thing was that the tendons were obviously very delicious. She didn't feel full no matter how much she ate. His throat was a little dry, and his stomach was also restless, clamoring for something to eat. She ate 2 spicy crab, 3 bowls of rice, a big meat bun, and 2 sweet date dumplings. As she ate, Helene Vivian finally realized that something was wrong. She seemed to have eaten all of His Highness's portion. Helene Vivian paused and raised her head to look at Beligaju. His Highness didn't say anything. The way he ate was beautiful to begin with, and the way he held the bamboo chopsticks could directly take a picture of an ancient costume poster. When he saw her silently put the crab leg in his bowl, he put the bamboo chopsticks on the porcelain plate. He took a white handkerchief prepared by the palace servants and wiped his hands. Then he brushed the messy hair on her cheek away and said naturally, "You don't need to give me anything. Eat your food." After Helene Vivian hummed in agreement, she followed the principle of not wasting food and cleaned up the remaining food on His Highness' plate. She knew that His Highness was a picky eater. When he ate things like carrots, although there was no obvious expression on his face, the corners of his mouth would droop down. So, she took the initiative to put the things he didn't like into her bowl. She ate everything anyway. Beligaju finished eating earlier than her, but he didn't leave. He sat on the chair next to her, his left hand on the back of Helene Vivian's chair, and his right hand occasionally raised to help Helene Vivian get food. Helene Vivian ate until she couldn't walk anymore. It was Beligaju who wiped her hands and pulled her up. "Where do you plan to start investigating?" "Of course, it's the person who hasn't been killed yet. All the girls in this area have gone missing, and only one called Yin Lu'er is still here. Don't you think it's strange?" Helene Vivian rubbed her stomach lazily. Beligaju looked at her cunning fox-like face and couldn't help but lower his head to kiss her lips. How strange. Under normal circumstances, these excluded special people are either the murderer, or related to the murderer, or they're the murderer's next target. Helene Vivian's voice was faint, but her eyes were bright. "Anyway, we have to find her first." Helene Weiwei's intuition told her that this inexplicable disappearance should be related to the source of the infection. Because of Sir Li's words, "There's nothing strange," it aroused Helene Vivian's suspicion. Anyone who committed a crime would leave behind clues. But the Minister of Personnel said that there was nothing at the scene. This case couldn't be treated as a normal missing person case. No matter what the truth was, she had to find out as soon as possible. It was not very late outside the palace, and it was snowing. The capital was bustling with people of all shapes and sizes walking around, so it didn't seem strange. However, it was different once she entered the deep alley. The surroundings were dark, and it seemed like there were echoes when she walked. Yen Lu didn't want to come out at night, and it wasn't very peaceful in this area recently. However, it was time for her to hand in the new shoes she made for someone, and she had to deliver it today. Only then did she rush out of the door. Along the way, She did not encounter any problems. She just didn't know why, but she suddenly felt cold, as if someone was following behind her, and it made her feel uneasy. When Yenlu reached the entrance of the alley, the feeling became more obvious. She couldn't help but pause for a moment. Then, she held her breath and ran forward. Only when the strange feeling was gone did he stop and support his long leg with one hand. However, at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared on the ground. Yenlu froze, feeling like all the blood in her body was going to flow backward, and she didn't dare to look up. Fortunately, the shadow seemed to be very far away from her. As long as she ran fast enough, she would reach her house after a turn. At this time, the people in the alley were still awake, and they would definitely hear her. Just as Yenlu was about to run, the shadow spoke. "Isn't this Lu? What are you doing here?" Yenlu was relieved when she heard the familiar voice. Chapter 676. It's nothing. Yenlu relaxed and her voice became faster. "You don't look like you're fine." The figure was still standing in front of the door with a wooden basin in his hand. His voice was calm. "You're a girl. It's better if you don't go out at night." Yenlu smiled and walked towards the figure. "It's really nothing. It's just that there's been a lot of things happening around here these few days. I'm worried." "Since it's nothing, you should go back. You're the only good girl on this street." The figure kept the wooden basin as he spoke, his voice low. "Don't learn from those people." Yenlu did not say anything else and nodded with a smile. That uncomfortable feeling earlier was so obvious that she could not help but turn back to look. The figure was still standing in the same spot, looking at her and waving his hand, telling her to go home early. Yenlu did not hesitate this time. She jogged towards her door. Just as she opened the door, she heard a clear and slightly cold voice. "Excuse me, miss, is this Yenlu's house?" Yenlu shuddered and turned back to look at the two people who were dressed normally, but were extraordinarily handsome. She was stunned for a moment before she nodded. Hellion Vivian, who was disguised as a man, sized up the girl before her. Her gaze fell on her shoes. "You just came from the alley?" "You?" Yenlu was shocked. How did this person know where she had been? Of course, Hellion Weiwei would not tell Yenlu, or that she had already surveyed the surroundings. Other than the snow at the entrance of the alley, the rest of the place was almost dry. However, Yenlu's soles were stained with some leftover snow. Furthermore, she did not look well, and her breathing was rapid. It was obvious that she had been running for a while. The reason for her running was most likely fear. Otherwise, she would not have shuddered when she heard her voice and turned around. That was a common reaction after being frightened. After Hellion Weiwei sized her up, she curled her lips and said, "We saw you just now. No wonder. I was wondering why I felt like someone was following me just now." Yenlu mumbled to herself. However, Hellion Vivian took it to heart. She turned her head and looked at Beligaju. Both of them knew that Hellion Vivian's words were just an excuse. In fact, they had never seen the person in front of them before. But this girl said that she felt like someone was following her just now. Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. When she turned around, she smiled. "Did you feel that someone was following you when you passed by the alley?" "Yes." Yenlu looked to her left and right with lingering fear. She smiled shyly. "Maybe I'm too timid. This area has not been very peaceful recently. I can't help but think too much." Hellion Vivian could see that she was not faking her fear. She eliminated the possibility of her being the culprit. She smiled gently and lazily. "It's not safe for a girl to go out at night. I've heard about the things around here, but I don't know the details. You said that you felt like someone was following you just now. That's why you ran so fast." Yenlu was embarrassed. "You saw me run? I was so scared just now, and I didn't see anyone behind me. Speaking of which, how did you get in front of me? Didn't you say that you were behind me?" Hellion Vivian noticed the loophole in her words, but she was calm. "We took the shortcut." "Shortcut?" Yenlu was confused. "I took the shortcut. Only the people in this area know how to take the shortcut." Hellion Vivian cleverly did not continue the topic. Instead, she asked, "It's so late, why are you here? Are you Yenlu?" Hellion Weiwei already knew the answer to this question. She had already guessed the girl's identity when Yenlu turned around. Yen Luer hesitated but did not answer. Her face showed signs of alertness. Coincidentally, Luer's mother walked out. She was relieved when she saw Yen Luer. Why are you so disobedient? How many times have I told you not to go out at night these few days? Don't you know that the world is chaotic? Luer's mother first scolded Yen Luer. When she saw Beligaju and Hellion Vivian, she paused for a moment. Who are these two young masters? Although the two of them were dressed in coarse clothes, they exuded an air of nobility. Coupled with their outstanding looks, it was difficult to ignore them, especially the person standing furthest away. Although he was standing far away, and the long robe he wore was made of ordinary material, he gave off an indescribable feeling. That's right. That feeling was like the high official she had met not long ago. Luer's mother could not help but feel a little scared. Hellion Vivian knew that it was impossible to turn His Highness into an ordinary person. Therefore, she was the only one who could show his friendliness. She had studied psychological detective in the modern era. She also knew the mentality of people like Luer's mother. When a murder case happened around them, those people would want to seek the protection of the authorities, but would subconsciously keep some things to themselves. Firstly, they were afraid of the authorities. Secondly, they were afraid of getting themselves involved and causing trouble. That was why Hellion Vivian did not use any identity from the authorities, but disguised herself as a commoner and came to the alley to investigate. However, it was obvious that as long as His Highness was around, there was no way to disguise herself as a commoner. Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and frowned. It's nothing. My friend and I were just passing by this place when we heard that something had happened. Now that we've seen it, I just want to remind you to be careful. Since we've met its fate, I have a yellow talisman here. You can carry it with you. Actually, this place. At this point, Hellion Weiwei paused, shook her head and said, Forget it. The officials don't allow us to speak carelessly. Bailey Jiaju knew that she was deliberately whetting his appetite. He turned toward Hellion Weiwei's direction and glanced at her. His good-looking thin lips curved upwards, bringing out a hint of ridicule and playfulness. As expected, Luer's mother could not stand Hellion Vivian's words. Sir, what did you say was this place? Hellion Vivian shook her head again. Luer's mother stepped forward. Sir, are you trying to say that this place is not very clean? Seeing that she had taken the bait, Hellion Vivian pretended to be mysterious and said, I didn't say anything. It's good that you know. The people of ancient times were superstitious to begin with. Luer's mother immediately nodded her head like a chick eating rice. Then, a worried look appeared in her eyes as she said, Ever since the day the authorities came, I knew that this wasn't a simple matter. Young master, you don't know. Chapter 677. For the past few days, the green wolf pup in my house has been barking non-stop. Its barking makes me feel uneasy. Every time it barks, it's at the same time. I didn't dare to tell the authorities about this. Didn't people in my previous life say that when a dog barks at night, it means that there's either a thief or something dirty? Just now the green wolf pup barked again. I'm afraid that something bad will happen to my daughter. If young master has any idea, can you help me? Luer's mother said sincerely. Hellion Vivian naturally agreed. She said, I need to check the feng shui of your house. Then, she successfully stepped through the wooden door of the Yin family. The Yin family lived in a very ordinary courtyard in the capital. There were some winter cabbages growing in the courtyard. Their family background was also ordinary. Hellion Weiwei looked around and did not notice anything unusual. She looked at the wolfhound hiding in the dark. Others couldn't see the wolf, but the wolf cub could sense the kingly aura of its kind. It waved its paws in front of it, but didn't dare to make a sound. Luer's mother found it strange. It was barking just now. Why is it so quiet now? The wolf cub. There's a big guy in front of it. How can it not be quiet? Boss. Compared to the wolf cub's arrogance, the wolf cub was both timid and excited. It kept running in circles. Hellion Vivian gave the wolf cub a look. The wolf cub immediately walked to the wolf cub and barked twice. As expected, the wolf cub barked happily. Woof 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 woof. It seemed to be answering a question. Luer's mother didn't care. She turned to Hellion Vivian and asked, Young master, Is everything okay in our house? Helian Weiwei faintly hummed, but her eyes carried a thoughtful look. This was also what Helian Weiwei felt was strange. She walked around in a circle. Almost every house looked very normal. Even the entrance of the alley didn't have the slightest bit of qi. If there was something unclean, not to mention the wolf dog, a certain highness would have long detected it. But unfortunately, they had already walked around in a circle, and still didn't find anything. Luer's mother was relieved when she heard Helian Vivian's words. At the same time, she was disappointed. Her daughter had been feeling uneasy recently. How could she be fine? Helian Vivian saw through her thoughts. She added, "There's nothing wrong with the feng shui, but the general trend of the houses around here isn't very good. Madam, if it's not too much trouble, I'd like you to tell me what's the connection between the disappearances? There are some things that you can't tell the people in the yamen. You have to tell me. Otherwise, even if I want to help your daughter, I don't know where to start." Luer's mother hesitated for a moment before saying, "We all live on the same street, so we see each other often. It's not that we keep in touch, but these girls are all." She paused, obviously finding it difficult to continue. Helian Vivian looked at her. "Madam, every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. If we can't find the source, I'm afraid that unclean thing won't leave." Luer's mother was so frightened that her face turned pale. "It's nothing serious, but it's not good for a girl's reputation to speak of such things. These girls are interested in Lord Zhang's second young master. Second young master Zhang often comes to the entrance of the alley to hang out." Helian Weiwei also understood when some words were said to stop before going too far. The light in her eyes flashed. "Second young master Zhang? Mother, don't spout nonsense." Yen Luer tugged at her mother's sleeve and bit her thin lips. "What if someone hears us?" Luer's mother finally reacted. She said to Helian Vivian, "Young master, I don't mean anything else. It's fine if you hear us, but please don't tell anyone." "Madam, don't worry. I'm not a gossipy person." Helian Vivian looked at Yen Luer again. She was still puzzled. Since she was not the murderer, and everything in the house was normal, why was she not harmed? Was it because she was the only one among these girls who did not interact with young Master Zhang? After Helian Vivian got the information she wanted, she looked at Beligaju again. His Highness stood tall and straight with an indifferent expression throughout the whole process. However, even so, it was enough to make the people who were looking at him blush shyly. Yen Luer was one of them. "Young master, would you like to have some tea too?" At that moment, something seemed to run past Yen Luer's feet. She shrieked and leaned towards Beligaju without looking. Her face was full of panic. There's something there." In a split second, the originally windless dark night soared with layer after layer of black fog. Bailey Jiaju seemed to have melted into the darkness. His ruthless, ice-cold eyes fell on the small hand on his own arm. The ridicule at the corner of his mouth was replaced by a danger that made people tremble with fear. Yen Luer seemed to have realized that her actions were inappropriate. The shyness on her face thickened. However, she did not notice the clear murderous intent in the man's eyes. Helian Vivian knew His Highness very well. Her first reaction was to hold Beligaju's arm. She said in a low voice, "She didn't do it on purpose." Beligaju still looked indifferent. However, the murderous intent in his eyes was gone. He untied his outer robe with one hand and threw it on the ground. Yen Luer was extremely embarrassed when she saw this. She stammered, "I'm sorry for being rude. Something seemed to have run past my feet just now, so I..." "Luer, are you all right?" Luer's mother asked anxiously. Yen Luer shook her head. She looked at her feet and rubbed her arms. "It's a rat. Why would there be a rat at this time? Why aren't these rats afraid of humans?" Helian Vivian's eyes flashed. Indeed, there should be very few rats on the streets at this time. It was winter after all. Were they not afraid of the cold? Could it be that it was like the time at Green Dragon Lake? That the resentment here was strong enough to force the rats out? No, that was not right. If there was resentment, His Highness should have noticed it. However, His Highness did not feel anything. These rats are not normal. It had been a long time since she had a conversation with her stream of consciousness. She heard His Highness' low and evil voice. Helly and Vivian missed Yuan Ming, who only knew how to laugh evilly. Miss Yuan Ming? There was a slight rise in his magnetic voice. Helly and Vivian denied firmly. No. Baligaju looked at her calmly. Helly and Vivian changed the topic immediately. Why are these rats not normal? They don't have souls. Chapter 678. No soul? Helly and Vivian immediately frowned. How can a rat wander around without a soul? Although she was not sure why this was the case, it was clear that there was something in the street that they had not detected. What is it? Why can't His Highness sense it? Baligaju turned around and said with a hint of mockery in his voice, It's probably something like that elder. It's neither alive nor dead. Even the surrounding air has become unpleasant. Unpleasant? Helly and Vivian's nose twitched, but she could not smell anything. On the other hand, the wolfhound in front of her kept sniffing the ground, but did not seem to have a specific direction. I can't wait like this any longer. Helly and Vivian asked Yin Lu, or to carry the yellow talisman with her. She politely bid farewell to the Yin mother and daughter. When she reached the door, she said softly, Blackie, let's go. The wolfhound finally raised its head and ran to Helly and Vivian. The little wolfhound in the courtyard started howling again. Helly and Wei Wei and Bailey Jiaju did not turn around. The alley was long and deep. Initially, it would have taken them 7 to 9 minutes to reach the entrance of the alley from the Yin family's residence. However, thanks to Luer's mother's reminder, they finally found a shortcut. The path was very dark, but it only took them 2 minutes to reach the entrance of the alley. Therefore, the people nearby would usually take the shortcut. Therefore, the Yamen had a problem with their investigation at the beginning. Without the people familiar with the streets, the officials from the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs did not know that there was a shortcut here. Naturally, they did not investigate it correctly. Helly and Vivian looked at the dark and deep path. There were 9 households along the way, including the Yin family. They were all small households with their wooden doors closed. It looked very peaceful. The Zhang family that Luer's mother mentioned was also among them. However, it was closer to the outside and had a red door with stone lions. Naturally, it looked more majestic than the other residences in the alley. The wolfhound walked forward. Its black fur seemed to have blended into the night. Its entire body exuded an indescribable aura. Suddenly, it stopped in its tracks and looked up. Helly and Vivian also stopped and followed the big wolfhound's gaze. A young master dressed in fine clothes was walking towards them. Behind him was a manservant, who pleaded, Young master, old master said to let you stay at home for 1 more day. You can only come out after the officials from the Ministry of Appointments are done with the case. Otherwise, if those officials see you, what are you nagging about? This young master has been at home for 3 days. My entire body is about to be crippled. What's wrong with coming out for a stroll? The man in the fur cloak impatiently flung the servant's hand away. He turned his head and met the eyes of Helly and Vivian and Baligaju. All of a sudden, his line of sight fell on Bailey Jiaju's face. With a haughty attitude he said, Where did this poor scholar come from? Helly and Vivian had always known about His Highness' ability to attract hatred. With his face in front of other men, it was true that he would attract a lot of jealousy. But poor scholar? Helly and Vivian laughed. She only felt that the person in front of her was extremely stupid. The man was still at the entrance of the alley. He looked behind Helly and Vivian and Baligaju with his head held high. The displeasure on his face became more obvious. He looked at Helly and Vivian and the others, as if he was looking at his own subordinates. Going to the Yin family again? Seriously, why are there so many people who don't understand logic nowadays? As he spoke, the man took 2 steps forward. He was very close to Baligaju. Don't blame this young master for not reminding you. You can't win against this young master. It's best if you give up. Don't think that you're so great just because you can study. Which girl would be willing to follow you if you're dressed so shabbily? Baligaju didn't say anything. He only raised his handsome eyebrows. His left hand was still leisurely adjusting his cuffs. Helly and Vivian watched as Little Black charged towards the man. Its black fur seemed to carry the wind as it bit the man's leg. In an instant the man's face turned pale. He bent his legs and knelt on the ground. He was still looking left and right. He didn't understand why he felt like he was bitten by something. When the servant saw his young master kneel, he thought that he slipped on the snow. He quickly helped the man up. "Young master, are you all right?" The noise was neither loud nor soft. It was so loud that the people in the alley opened their doors and stuck their heads out to take a look. The man immediately felt that he had lost face. He swung his leg and blocked Beligaj's path. "Good, you dare to plot against this young master? Do you know who I am? Let me tell you. If you don't kneel down and apologize to this young master today, don't even think about leaving here." Beligaju did not even look at him as he strolled past him. The man had never seen anyone who didn't care about him. He shouted in a low voice, "Go call the officers who are still investigating the case over. Tell them that this young master found a suspicious person and has clues to provide." "But master ordered." The servant still wanted to say something. The man sneered. "Father ordered you to clear me of suspicion. Now that there's someone more suspicious than this young master, what are you worried about? Call my father over as well. This young master wants to see how they can escape." When Hellion Vivian heard this, her eyes paused. She reached out and grabbed His Highness's sleeve. The corner of her mouth curled up. She communicated with him in her mind. "It sounds like this person has a strong background. The second young master of the Zhang family." Beligaju slowly spat out these 5 words. Hellion Vivian knew that His Highness had always been smart, so it wasn't strange that he could guess the other person's identity. She also knew that the slower His Highness spoke, the more ruthless he would be when he messed with someone. Hellion Vivian didn't want to mourn for the second young master of the Zhang family anymore. She knew that the other party was definitely going to die. She began to mourn for Master Zhang. No matter what kind of officer the other party was, he probably couldn't keep his Dai Hua Ling hat this time. Sigh. Hellion Vivian glanced at the second young master of the Zhang family again. She thought to herself, "This is such a troublemaker." The others were leaning against the door and looking in their direction. Yen Lu immediately recognized that the person who had a conflict with the second young master of the Zhang family was one of the 2 young masters who had just left their house. She ran over to help Beligaju. "Young Master Zhang, they're just geomancers. They're not suspicious. You've misunderstood." Hellion Vivian instinctively frowned when she heard this. She and His Highness did not use their martial chi just now, because they were afraid of alerting the enemy, because on this street, one of the families must be the murderer. Chapter 679. Whether it was the time of the crime or the circumstances of the crime, only a person who lived on this shortcut would be able to leave no traces behind in just 2 minutes. According to the night watchman's testimony, he only heard one cry for help. Because it was too fast, he thought he had misheard. Today, Yen Lu had also said that she felt like someone was watching her when she was coming back. Hellion Vivian's first instinct told her that Yen Lu did not think too much about it. Sometimes, a person's senses could detect danger earlier than their eyes. In other words, the danger was in this street. If Hellion Vivian's guess was correct, the night watchman did not miss here. But that person only had time to scream once. This was also a suspicious point. Under normal circumstances, when a person sensed danger, their first reaction would be to stop, and then quicken their pace, especially when they felt that someone was following them. When the danger was close, people would instinctively call for help. There would be at least 2 or more cries for help. This was in line with the most basic human reflex. Yet the night watchman only heard one cry. Other than the first victim, the rest did not even cry for help. Hellion Vivian had been wondering why this was. Before she could solve this question, she did not want anyone to know that they were exorcists. Now that Yen Lu said this, it undoubtedly messed up her plan. Hellion Vivian sighed in her heart. She could only continue to pretend to be a feng shui master. When second young Master Zhang heard Yen Lu pleading for mercy and looked at her slightly reddened cheeks, his resentment towards Bailey Jiaju grew. However, on the surface, he appeared to be righteous. "Miss Yen, I know that you want to save them, but who can guarantee that they are really good at reading feng shui? If they are really here to look at feng shui, why didn't they come earlier or later? Why did they only come to the alley when something happened? They didn't just walk around, they even found this shortcut. Who knows what their purpose is? I don't think they are here just to look at feng shui. It was undeniable that second young Master Zhang was a little smart. It was this cleverness that made the surrounding people vigilant. The people of several households looked at each other, obviously on guard. Hellion Vivian knew that she could no longer pretend to be a feng shui master to gather information. So she simply observed everyone's expression. Yen Luer was still pleading for them. Young Master Zhang, they are indeed feng shui masters. This young master even gave me a yellow talisman to keep me safe. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Why don't you just tell the whole world that you have a talisman on you, and wait for people to come and cheat you? Hellion Wei sighed again. She didn't know what to do with this kind and pure girl. After all, this girl was trying to protect them. She just didn't know if the yellow talisman would be able to save her life at the crucial moment, if she said it out loud. Hellion Wei was a little worried. But at this point, she could only see wherever she went. It was obvious that second young Master Zhang did not want to let them go. To be precise, he did not want to let His Highness go. Yen Luer's pleading angered him. Hellion Vivian communicated with His Highness using her consciousness stream. Next time, it's better for you to darken your face when you go out. You're attracting too much attention. The main thing is, this girl will always bring you trouble. Baligaju did not say anything. He only glanced at her calmly. His meaning was simple. If you say another word, I'll kill you right away to save you the trouble. Hellion Vivian was helpless. Master, you should just continue to look cool. Don't do anything. Please don't do anything. Once they did, they would not be able to find anything. If they did not find the source and simply killed the culprit, the source of infection would probably still exist. Therefore, they had to know which family was the problem. One of Hellion Vivian's principles was not to kill the innocent. No matter how ruthless or insidious the people under young Master Tang were, they all followed this principle, of course. Those who kept provoking her were exceptions, like this second young Master Zhang before her. Lady Yen, you're too kind. What can a yellow talisman prove? If you want to disguise your identity, you'll need some tools. Second young Master Zhang was very polite to Yen Luer, behaving like an elegant gentleman. Yen Luer wanted to say something, but realized that he always had something to say to her. A person dressed like a scholar could not stand it anymore. He put down the book in his hand and was about to walk over. Why are you so nosy? Someone called him from behind. Hellion Vivian looked over and saw an old woman pulling her son back, as if she was afraid of getting into trouble. However, when second young Master Zhang saw the scholar, he smirked in disdain, then continued to talk to Yen Luer. Lady Yen, it's cold outside. You should go back first. I'll ask my father to let these two people go for your sake. As long as they don't come to this alley in the future, everything will be fine. Don't come to this alley in the future? Yen Luer mumbled to herself in a daze. She glanced at Baligaju again, slightly disappointed. Baligaju did not look at her, but suddenly turned back to look at the alley. He walked one round and frowned. What's wrong? Hellion Vivian asked in a low voice. Baligaju's eyes darkened. There was something just now. Hellion Vivian followed his gaze, but it was still the same people in the alley. She could not pinpoint their exact location. Yen Luer panicked when she saw Baligaju's indifference. Her tone became faster. Master, quickly tell young Master Zhang that you won't come to this alley in the future. According to His Highness's character, he would not say anything. He stood there with an indifferent look in his eyes, looking like a noble. The more second young Master Zhang looked at him, the angrier he got. Coincidentally, the servant brought people over from the side of the street. There were 6 soldiers, and a civil official wearing a black gauze hat. What's going on? What's going on here? The civil official saw the snow stains on his son's legs at first glance. His eyes fell on Baligaju and Hellion Vivian sternly, his face full of anger and pressure. These are the suspects you were talking about? Second young Master Zhang nodded. Yes, father. These 2 people even pretended to be geomancers in an attempt to get away with it. You said that if anything were to happen in the alley, it would be the Yen family. However, these 2 people did not go anywhere. They only went to the Yin family. It's not like I've never seen a geomancer before. A real geomancer would not dress like this. They didn't even have a copper coin on them. One look, and you can tell that they're fake. Chapter 680. Hellion Vivian then remembered that all feng shui masters would have copper coins hanging on their bodies. Only when they could exorcise evil spirits would they have yellow talismans. Now, she and His Highness had skipped the process of hanging copper coins, and directly gave Yin Lu, or a yellow talisman. It was indeed illogical. No wonder second young Master Zhang guessed that they had other motives for coming here. Lord Zhang was originally anxious. Just today, news came from above that the Minister of Personnel, Lord Li, would personally investigate the case. He was still worried about this. Once the case at the alley was investigated in detail, it would be difficult for his beloved son not to be implicated. Now that there was a scapegoat, everything would be easy to handle. Guards, take these two suspects who are impersonating feng shui masters away. Lord Zhang glanced at Hellion Vivian and the rest. He already had a plan in mind. He would use these two to close the case. When Hellion Weiwei saw Lord Zhang's actions, she immediately understood what he was thinking. The corners of her mouth lifted, and she smiled faintly. Lord Zhang, you want to arrest us based on your son's one-sided statement. Isn't this too arbitrary of an official? Aren't you afraid that you will be wrongly accused? Everyone who is arrested by me says that they are wrongly accused. Lord Zhang glanced coldly at Hellion Vivian. But no matter how stubborn they are, they will not benefit from it in the end. Hellion Vivian smiled. What about your son? Since Lord Zhang is so wise, don't you know that all the missing people know your son and have interacted with him for a period of time? We are just here to check out the feng shui in the alley, and Lord Zhang wants to arrest us. Isn't your son, who is closely related to all the missing people, more suspicious? Hearing this, Lord Zhang's expression suddenly changed. Even Zhang Yu himself showed a trace of guilt on his face. The people who were standing at the entrance to watch the commotion stopped what they were doing and looked at Zhang Yu. Among them, a woman dressed in coarse cloth spoke with a trembling voice. Young Master Zhang, is it you? My Ling. Went out that day to see you. But she never came back after she left. I originally thought that this old woman was just letting her imagination run wild. Apart from meeting Linger, who else could it be? Did you see anyone else? What do you think our Linger is? She even broke off the engagement with old Lady Wang for you, you scum. As she spoke, she reached out to pull Zhang Yu's clothes. You old woman, are you done yet? Zhang Yu pushed her away in disgust. If it wasn't for Hellion Weiwei supporting her from behind, she would have fallen to the ground long ago. However, Zhang Yu was full of disapproval. I'm a scum? Scum? How good do you think your daughter is? Every time she sees me, she can't wait to get close to me. To be honest, I didn't think I would like her at first. Who told her to be so proactive? I only coaxed her a little, and she really thought she was a treasure. Did she think I would marry her? Look at her own background. It's fine for us to play together. After all, she is quite pretty. If she really wants to marry into our Zhang family, she has to be able to endure loneliness. Her fiancé was away for a few days, and she seduced me. She even sent someone to deliver a letter to me in the middle of the night. This is all done by your precious daughter. Her eagerness really opened my eyes. You. The woman was breathless from Zhang Yu's words. Zhang Yu laughed. Besides, you were the one who broke off the engagement with old Lady Wang, right? At that time, everyone on this street was present. What did you say about that scholar? Oh right. You said that they would never be successful in their lives. Linger still gave it to me. I was lucky enough to let them know what was good for them and agree as soon as possible. You said that I'm scum. Why don't you think about how vain you and your daughter are? I also saw through your Ling, so I didn't want to continue with her. I didn't expect that she would still shamelessly pester me. I can't get rid of her no matter how hard I try. The woman was speechless. After all, she did say that back then. Her old face was red and white as she looked at the people around her. Most of the people still remembered her words clearly. No one jumped out to speak for her. The woman looked around. Seeing that no one was helping her, She simply sat on the ground and cried. My poor Linger. She was ruined just like that. Zhang Yu couldn't be bothered to look at her again. He tidied up his clothes. Helian Weiwei looked at this scene and did not help the woman up like she used to. Although the second young master of the Zhang family was very bad, based on the current situation, Linger's family wouldn't be any better. No wonder Lu Er's mother hesitated when talking about these girls. Helian Vivian guessed that Lu Er's mother wanted to say that they were indecent. Later on, she was afraid that it would cause trouble, so she simply changed her words. Thinking about it, all young ladies would want to marry a rich and powerful husband. This second young master of the Zhang family was somewhat handsome and knew how to use words to coax girls. In addition, with his status, he would definitely be popular. It would be very convenient for him to flirt with anyone he wanted. If it wasn't because the path of reincarnation would be affected, Helian Vivian wouldn't want to touch this kind of case under normal circumstances. In her opinion, one was willing to be beaten, and the other was willing to be beaten. There were many cases like this in modern times. Some people didn't know how to respect themselves. They casually went to a hotel with a stranger through online platforms and were killed in the end. Helian Weiwei didn't know why there were so many practical examples out there. But there were still people who would touch the bottom line for the opportunity to fly up the branch and become a phoenix, thinking that they would get the opportunity to fly up the branch and become a phoenix, even breaking off the engagement because of this? Helian Vivian's fingers paused. Breaking off the engagement? But in comparison, Yin Lu'er is much cuter. Helian Vivian thought about this and smiled at Yin Lu'er. Yin Lu'er was really confused by the other party's laughter. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Beligaju pulled Helian Vivian over possessively and said in a low voice, What are you laughing at? Helian Vivian. She wasn't laughing at random. Next time, don't smile at anyone other than me. His Highness' expression was very calm. However, as smart as Helian Vivian was, she could smell jealousy. She felt helpless. Yin Lu'er liked His Highness. She should be the one to be jealous. Seeing the change in front of him, Lord Zhang's eyes darkened. He said to Helian Vivian, I've underestimated you. You can pin the blame on you with just a few words. You're really something. Do you think you can get away with this and get away with it? You're still talking and laughing. Who do you think I am? Take them all away. Chapter 681. Yes, sir. A few officers surrounded them again. Helian Vivian curled her lips mockingly. She turned her head and saw His Highness's face. His long, narrow eyes hid a light, and there was a thick chill in his deep, cold eyes. The two of them looked at each other, but did not resist. They strolled forward casually, allowing the officers to lead them forward. Before coming here, Helian Vivian had already informed the Minister of Personnel to keep an eye on his subordinates and personally investigate this case. Now that Lord Zhang insisted on taking them away, it was obvious that he wanted to bring them to meet the Minister of Personnel so that he could close the case as soon as possible and protect his son's safety. How stupid. Coincidentally, there were too many people here. It was not convenient for her and His Highness to do anything. Once they met Lord Li, she would take care of the Zhang family's father and son. Helian Vivian yawned and continued walking forward. Yin Lu'er tiptoed and kept looking in their direction. Every time her gaze fell on Beligaju, she was reluctant to part with him. This made Zhang Yu's eyes darken even more. He thought about how many times he had hinted to this Yin Lu'er, but she did not give him a chance. The moment this pretty boy arrived, he received such treatment. Zhang Yu was very upset. Of course, he did not really like Yin Lu'er that much. It was just that he liked her. Plus, he could not bring himself to do it, which made his heart itch even more. Now that he saw the bashful look on her face when she looked at Beligaju, he felt like she was slapping his own face. He was the young master of the Zhang family. Which part of him was not better than that pretty boy? Zhang Yu sneered. Isn't this gigolo so likable? I'll just let him die. Just based on the fact that he dared to go against me just now. These two people deserve to be scapegoats. Lord Zhang's thoughts were even more direct. There were countless cases in the Ministry of Personnel. Even if Lord Li was personally investigating, The most important thing in this missing persons case was time. It had been 2 days since the incident. He was the officer in charge of the case. As long as he carefully moved a few clues, he would be able to move the evidence. In addition, from the way these two people were dressed, they didn't seem to have any background. Both of them were extremely poor. Even if they were used as scapegoats, they wouldn't cause any trouble. If they were obedient, when the year came, he would use the excuse of insufficient evidence to release these two people. If they didn't listen to him, like today, then he didn't need to talk about morality anymore. After all, there were so many people in the capital, so it wasn't a big deal if 1 or 2 commoners died. Lord Zheng's calculations were very good. With a criminal, he could first clear the suspicion of his beloved son, and also save him from being unable to leave the house for several days. Secondly, he could make a contribution in front of Lord Li, so why not? Zhang Yu knew what his father was thinking. Seeing that they were all on the same side, he lowered his voice and said, "Father, will Lord Li find out anything? Don't worry, no one will dare to spread rumors about you. But you after this matter is over, you'd better behave yourself for a few days. Don't interact with those poor girls in the alleyway anymore. Father knows that you like to play, and I have never interfered in your matters. But look, that old Madame Zhang's tone just now. It's obvious that she wants to rely on you. These poor people are troublesome. They are always whimsical and greedy. They don't know what's good for them." Helly and Vivian listened to the conversation between the father and son. Her suppressed eyes grew colder and colder, and the coldness emitted from them seemed to be able to kill. Lord Zhang, who was focused on warning his beloved son, didn't notice this. Instead, he adjusted the black gauze hat on his head and confidently led Helly and Vivian and Beligaju into the Li estate. The Minister of Appointments, Lord Li, was in his study. Right now his mood was like ants on a hot pan. He couldn't sit still for a moment. Other than the progress of the investigation, he couldn't forget what Wang Fei said to him in the palace. Calculating the time, His Highness and Wang Fei should have already gone to the entrance of the alley, right? None of the people he sent down came to report the news. He couldn't tell anyone that he had ordered people to keep an eye on the entrance of the alley at all times. A large part of the reason was that he had to ensure the safety of His Highness and Wang Fei, although His Highness didn't need his protection at all. But what if something really happened to His Highness? Even if he had 9 heads, it wouldn't be enough to be chopped off. Not to mention that the retired emperor would want his life. Even his colleagues worshipped the royal family immensely after the exorcism competition. That great General Wu Jing pulled him to tell him about His Highness's achievements every day. His face was flushed with excitement, and it was comparable to a young girl seeing her sweetheart. If he knew that something had happened to His Highness in his territory, he was going to use his axe to pry up his entire mansion. The more the Minister of Appointments thought about it, the more anxious he became. He pulled the page boy and asked, "How is it? Did anyone unusual go to the entrance of the alley?" The page boy looked at his collar that was being pulled up. "Master, you've asked this question 7 or 8 times. In just a short 2 hours, he had run until his legs were about to break. So is it true or not?" The Minister of Appointments was originally a very gentle person, but today, he looked exceptionally irritable. "No." The page boy shook his head. The errand boy shook his head. Then he remembered that he came in because he had something else to report. He said respectfully, "Master, Lord Zhang wants to see you. He said that he has evidence and caught the criminal. He is in the front hall now." When the Minister of Appointments heard that the criminal was caught, his eyes immediately lit up. There was finally a smile on his face, and he strode toward the front hall. At this moment, Lord Zhang was sitting on a wooden chair with a cup of tea in his hand. He had a draft in his mind. He wanted to perform well when he met Lord Li later, so that he could use this opportunity to be promoted again. Zhang Yu sat next to him. He did not look like a dog who bullied others at the entrance of the alley at all. Instead, he was well behaved. He looked left and right inside. As expected of the Minister of Appointments' residence, his family did not lack money, but the residence of a high-ranking official was big, and the residence of a low-ranking official was small. He knew a few of the young masters in the capital, but most of them were of the same rank as his father, or slightly higher than his father. Their residences were about the same, but this was the first time he had seen such a large residence like the Li residence. While Zhang Yu was thinking, he saw a person briskly walk in from outside. He was still wearing the official's robes that he had not changed out of. Lord Zhang immediately stood up and bowed. Zhang Yu stood up as well and bowed. Lord Li, the Minister of Appointments, waved his hand. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. There's no need for formalities. Lord Zhang, I heard that you caught the criminal involved in the disappearance at the entrance of the alley. Where is the criminal? Where is he? Chapter 682. When Lord Zhang saw how excited the minister was, he knew that he had placed the right bet. He immediately said, "They're outside. I'll get someone to bring them in now." As he spoke, Lord Zhang glanced at the officers beside him. "Hurry up and bring the criminals in." The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was delighted when he saw that there was a clue to the case. "Lord Zhang, how did you catch the criminals? I've been troubled by this case for the past 2 days." Lord Zhang had the intention of recommending his beloved son to the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. He patted Zhang Yu's shoulder and said, "It's all thanks to my second son. He's been smart since he was young. This time, we were able to catch the criminals because he noticed something suspicious. That's why I was able to catch them." Oh, the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs looked at Zhang Yu and praised him politely. What a young talent. Zhang Yu was flattered by the praise. Although he said that he was flattered, the smile on his face grew brighter. This time it was a blessing in disguise. He found 2 scapegoats. Perhaps his career would be promoted as well. After all, even the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was praising him. Lord Li didn't care about the Zhang family's father and son. His mind was filled with the fact that the case was solved. He could finally answer to His Highness and the Princess Consort. Just as the Minister of the Ministry of Appointments was thinking about these things with his head lowered, the officer who had just left came back in with 2 people. The 2 people had long iron chains on their hands, but this did not affect their temperament at all. They were indifferent, and did not look like criminals who had been detained at all. Lord Zhang stepped forward and reminded the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. "Lord Li, the criminals are here." The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Personnel pulled himself out of his thoughts and raised his head to look at the wooden door. It was fine if he didn't look, but when he saw the 2 people's faces and figures, the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs jumped up from his wooden chair. His eyes widened, and he coughed out the tea he drank because of the violent reaction. "Your Highness." Before the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs could say "Your Highness," he suddenly remembered the 3rd Princess Consort's order. He swallowed the rest of his words and looked at the cold chains in fear. There was only one thought in his mind. Fuck, if that Zhang guy wants to die, then he can die by himself. He even wants to drag me along. Does he know what stupid thing he did? He actually kidnapped the royal family. He even brought her to the Li residence. At this moment, the Minister of Personnel only wanted to cry. His eyes stared at Beligage's perfect side profile as he screamed in his heart. "Your Highness, this old subject is innocent. You have to believe in this old subject's loyalty." Helene Vivian wanted to laugh as she watched from the side. She opened her mouth and said, "Lord Li, we were wrongly accused." The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs finally found his voice. He nodded heavily at Helene Vivian and said, "I believe you." Helene Vivian cleared her throat and reminded him to pay attention to his attitude. No official would behave like this when he saw a suspect. The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs didn't want to, but when he saw His Highness's face, his legs couldn't help but go weak. The Zhang father and son also noticed the Secretary of State's strange behavior and raised their eyebrows. Lord Li, the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs, forced himself to calm down and turned his head. This way he couldn't see His Highness's eyes. He finally regained his confidence and said to the Zhang father and son, "Lord Zhang, the most important thing when investigating a case is evidence. How can you arrest people without evidence? They even arrested the King of Hell. They must be tired of living. When Lord Zhang heard his question, he replied calmly, I'm still investigating the other evidence, but the whereabouts of these two people are really suspicious. All the missing people in the alley have the same characteristics as unmarried girls. So far, the only girl left in the alley is the daughter of the Yin family. These two people pretended to be feng shui masters and went to the Yin family as soon as they arrived at the alley. It's obvious that these two people are definitely related to the case. The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress the urge to drag Lord Zhang over and shake him. His Highness and the Princess Consort went to investigate the case. You stupid pig. Helian Weiwei, however, smiled disapprovingly. Lord Zhang, the common characteristics of all the missing persons in the alley case is not only that they are all unmarried young girls, but also that each of these young girls is inextricably linked to your son. Why didn't you tell Lord Li about this? What? The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs looked at the Zhang father and son, his eyes darkening. Lord Zhang, shouldn't you explain to me the relationship between your son and the missing people? Cold sweat broke out on Lord Zhang's palms, but he remained calm. Lord Chun, I thought this was nothing. After all, it's not a secret in the alley, so I didn't report it to you. Since you want to hear it, I'll tell you everything. My son has been popular with women since he was young. I don't mean to belittle the commoners, but the girls in the alley were too bold. Every time they saw you, they would come up to him and say a few words. Some even secretly sent a servant to send a letter to you. You is young after all, so he couldn't control himself. It's just a normal relationship, but now it's being used against him. Speaking of which, it's all because those girls were too indecent. They came out so late at night and met with mishap in the end. What does it have to do with you, Helian Vivian hated this kind of man the most. Everyone knew that the cause of this incident was second young Master Zhang's flirtatious behavior. If he hadn't wantonly seduced the girls, none of these things would have happened. Now that he was talking about it, he wanted to throw all the dirty water on the girls. What a jerk. Since Lord Zhang won't let go of the fact that the missing people went out late at night, then I'd like to ask young Master Zhang, why did your lovers come out late at night? Helian Vivian looked at Zhang Yu with shining eyes. It's because of you, right? You were the one who asked them to come out late at night for a rendezvous with you, right? Zhang Yu's body froze. He didn't expect the other party to know about this. Ling was the first to go missing. Her mother also said that she never came back after meeting you that night. Helian Vivian smiled faintly. Let me guess. You didn't want to see her at that time, right? Zhang Yu's face suddenly turned pale because she guessed right. Don't talk nonsense. No one knew about this, not even old Madame Zhang. He had intended to dump Zhang Ling long ago. How did this brat who came out of nowhere know? Chapter 683. The reason why you didn't want to see Zhang Ling is very simple. You were busy with other girls at that time. Helian Vivian acted as if she didn't see Zhang Yu's expression and continued speaking calmly. You felt that Zhang Ling was a burden to you because she was too whimsical. You thought it was just a game to you. But you didn't expect her to want to marry you so badly that she even tried to ruin your meeting with other girls. To Helian Vivian, these were just normal deductions. She didn't listen to the quarrel quietly at the entrance of the alley for nothing. She collected information, sorted out the clues, and deduced the truth. The Minister of Personnel had already seen Helian Vivian's meticulous deductions. Now that he heard Helian Vivian's words, he couldn't help but admire her to the extreme. Zhang Yu looked at Helian Vivian as if he had seen a ghost. This person even knew what he was thinking. You didn't want to see her, but you went that day because you wanted to put an end to this relationship. Helian Vivian lowered her clear eyes as if she could see through everything. Someone at the entrance of the alley said that there was a couple arguing that day. The night watchman also heard the commotion. Actually, it wasn't a couple arguing, but you and Zhang Ling. You warned her to stop pestering you, but she couldn't accept it. She even broke off the engagement because of you. But you dumped her just like that. How could there be such a good thing? That's why it sounded like a couple arguing. Zhang Yu clenched his fists and his heart trembled, but his face was full of disdain. You're a good storyteller, but after all that, where's the evidence? I don't want to argue with you commoners. You want to push the blame to me because you're suspicious? Do you think the Ministry of Personnel's judicial system is just for show? It seems that I guessed correctly. Hellion Vivian studied his expression and suddenly smiled. Zhang Yu narrowed his eyes and lowered his voice, so that only the two of them could hear. I know you don't have any evidence, but I advise you to be sensible. That way, I can spare your life. Otherwise, the Zhang family is not to be trifled with. Oh! Hellion Vivian smirked playfully and looked at Zhang Yu. Time is limited, so I can't be bothered to look for evidence. Since young Master Zhang likes to use his status to oppress others, I won't hold back. As she spoke, she looked at the secretary of the Ministry of Personnel. Her lips curled into a smile, but her eyes were cold. Lordly, drag Zhang Yu out and give him 100 beatings. If he doesn't confess, continue until he does. Zhang Yu snorted. Who do you think you are? Do you think Lordly will listen to your one-sided story? To his surprise, the Minister of Appointments bowed respectfully to the person in front of him and said, Yes, Wang Fei. Wang Fei. Zhang Yu swallowed the rest of his words. She turned around and looked at Hellion Vivian in disbelief. Even the astute Lord Zhang was so shocked by the way the Minister of Personnel addressed him that his face turned pale. This person was the Princess Consort. Then, the other one, Bailey Jiaju, did not speak from the beginning to the end. It was only until now that he slowly opened his mouth. His voice was still very pleasant to hear. 100 planks is too light. Just cut off his thing down there. It will also teach Lord Zhang a lesson. When Lord Zhang heard that, he knelt on the ground with a thud. He had never seen the royal family, but he had heard of the royal family's methods. This was clearly what that person liked to play with. And he had actually kidnapped the current crown prince of the imperial court. He even wanted to use him as a scapegoat for his son. The more Lord Zhang thought about it, the more scared he became. His entire body trembled in fear, and he kowtowed again and again. The sound was so loud that it made one's head hurt. This official has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I have offended your highness. Please spare my life. Lord Zhang, who was extremely proud of himself just now, was now stuttering and trembling. Zhang Yu retreated in fear. A man in black appeared out of nowhere and pressed down on his leg. The gleam of the knife in his hand was so obvious. I'll tell you everything. Zhang Yu wailed and struggled. His face was full of tears. Even his pants were wet. Clearly he was scared out of his wits. Hellion Vivian couldn't help but admire His Highness' methods. He was much more ruthless than her. He even thought of taking someone's manhood. It was just that this scene was too disgusting. Hellion Vivian looked at Zhang Yu and reached out to cover her nose. Baligaju glanced at the shadow guard in black. The shadow guard immediately stopped moving. The knife flashed and retreated, as if it had never appeared. Zhang Yu crawled on the ground and kowtowed heavily a few times. Your Highness, the disappearance at the entrance of the alley really has nothing to do with me. I did go to the entrance of the alley that day, but after quarreling with Zhang Ling I left. She wouldn't let go of me. I didn't want to have anything to do with her, so why would I kidnap her? And the other two people, I don't know why they suddenly disappeared. They were fine when I saw them. Zhang Yu was obviously a little incoherent. In fact, when they were at the entrance of the alley, Hellion Vivian had already ruled out the possibility that Zhang Yu was the culprit. Because these women were just for him to pass the time. Even if he didn't like them, he could just send them away with money, or use his status to pressure them. He wouldn't kidnap them. Hellion Vivian followed him back, because he might have seen the culprit, but he didn't remember. Hellion Vivian's idea came from Granny Zhang's words. Since Zhang Ling disappeared after meeting Zhang Yu, that meant that the culprit was also there that night. It was the same for the other two girls. After their rendezvous with Zhang Yu, they must have met someone else on their way home. Zhang Yu, since you say you're innocent, then think about it. When you met Zhang Ling and the others, did you feel anything strange? Or did you see anyone? Hellion Vivian's voice was calm. That counts as an acquaintance from the alley. Zhang Yu racked his brain. I didn't see anyone else, But on the day I met Zhang Ling, there was something weird. I felt like something was watching Zhang Ling, but Zhang Ling, didn't notice it at all. Plus, I saw a strange shadow that day. What do you mean? Hellion Vivian's eyes lit up, and she immediately caught the main point in Zhang Yu's words. Zhang Yu described it abstractly. The shadow was a little short, and even its back was bulging. If it wasn't walking behind me, I wouldn't have known it was a person. Its back was bulging. Hellion Vivian's brows furrowed. She seemed to be thinking about something, and her fingers tapped on her long legs. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. I think I know who the culprit is. Ah! This time, Zhang Yu was stunned. He forgot to close his mouth. He only mentioned a shadow, and she only knew who the culprit was? The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs was also puzzled. He turned his head and whispered to Hellion Weiwei. Princess Consort, why do I feel that this shadow was pulled out by Ghost Zhang? Who would have such a bulging back? The back doesn't really bulge into a lump. It's just that in the dark, if a hunchbacked person is hit by the shadow, it will look like a lump. Hellion Weiwei's voice was very faint. However, the Minister of Personnel knew that it wasn't that easy to think of this. One must have an extremely fast mind. Involuntarily, the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs looked at Hellion Weiwei with even more admiration. He said in an impassioned voice, I will order people to write a notice now. All hunchbacked men are to be arrested in the city. No need. Hellion Weiwei turned around, her gaze slowly falling on the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs. Because the prisoner is not a man. Not a man. The Minister of Personnel's eyes widened. How is that possible? They had been investigating for more than 3 days. From the beginning, they had targeted the culprit as a man. After all, the missing people were all young girls. Why did the Princess Consort say that the culprit wasn't a man? Did they investigate wrongly? Hellion Vivian's voice was still very calm. Nothing is impossible. Because when a person is young, most of them will have a hunchback when they walk. Princess Consort, you mean that the culprit is an old man? The Minister of Personnel felt that this conclusion was too unbelievable. How can an old man be so nimble and not leave any traces after kidnapping someone? Hellion Vivian smiled. What's wrong with an old man? The more harmless a person is, the lower the guard of the missing people. I had been wondering why the missing people didn't call for help. Now I finally figured it out. There were 2 reasons why they didn't call for help. One was that the person was someone they were very familiar with. And the second was the process of how they were kidnapped. The entrance of the alley was small, so the slightest noise could be heard. However, when the 3 of them disappeared, other than Zhang Ling, and Zhang Yu who had quarreled, the other 2 simply disappeared without a trace. This was very unusual, so I calculated what happened after Zhang Yu left. Under normal circumstances, the darker the night, the more familiar people are with the paths they are familiar with. From the entrance of the alley to the house of the missing people, there is a small path that only the people on that street know. During this time, they will walk very quickly because women will subconsciously increase their speed when walking alone at night. They will also develop a corresponding vigilance. Even if there is no one behind them, they will feel that something is wrong. Moreover, there was danger at that time. That's even stranger. Since they were on guard, why didn't they call for help? Even if it was someone they were very familiar with, they should have subconsciously called out. After all, the Minister of Personnel had handled so many cases. He still felt that something was strange. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said, because that person didn't appear behind them, but in front of them. It would be best if he stood in front of their house and came out to sprinkle some water. Everything would look natural and normal. Not only would it not make them call for help, it would lower their guard and let them naturally approach him. Then, when they are not prepared, he would use a prepared handkerchief to cover them and drag them to his own courtyard. Everything would be done without anyone knowing and would not waste any time. This official doesn't understand. Princess Consort, are you saying that the culprit already knew that they were coming back? Wait, standing in front of their house. The Minister of Personnel's eyes widened. The culprit lives in the alley? Yes. Helian Weiwei smiled slowly. Besides, it's not difficult to find out when the missing person will return. After all, they all live in the same alley. Moreover, Zhang Yu and the missing person's rendezvous time is fixed. As long as we arrange everything in advance and wait for the missing person to walk right into the trap, even if the authorities investigate, they won't be able to trace it back to her. Besides being harmless, she has Zhang Yu, who looks like a criminal, in front of her. In order to protect his son, Lord Zhang will definitely not report the truth of the situation at the entrance of the alley to his superiors, unless the higher-ups really want to investigate. However, she is not afraid of being investigated because she knows that even if she doesn't say it herself, the neighbors will reveal Zhang Yu's matter. The most suitable person to be a culprit is still Zhang Yu. She only needs to be a bystander and can enjoy the fruits of others' labor. This way, not only can she get rid of the girls she hates, she can also make Zhang Yu suffer. The more the Minister of Personnel listened, the more shocked he became. This is too thorough. Not only was it thorough, it was extremely vicious. If it was not for the princess, this case would have become an unjust case. No matter how thorough it is, there will be flaws. Unexpectedly, Beligaju, who had not spoken since the beginning, actually spoke. His sexy and good-looking thin lips curved slightly with mockery. Moreover, it is such an obvious cause and effect relationship. The Minister of Personnel listened with a blank expression. That's right. All of this is just a personal grudge. Helian Vivian laughed and glanced at Zhang Yu, who was kneeling on the ground. A playboy with no moral principles has caused such a big trouble. Even the path of reincarnation was almost locked up because of this matter. No matter how I look at it, I don't like it. Forget it. Let's continue to let the shadow guards castrate him. Just as Helian Vivian finished speaking, Zhang Yu felt his leg being lifted again. With a flash of a knife, the immense pain spread from his lower limbs to his entire body. He did not even have the chance to cry for mercy before he fainted from the pain. Lord Zhang rushed over and hugged his beloved son's head. Why? Didn't the princess say that the culprit is not my son? He is indeed not a culprit. But the cause of all this is because he stole someone else's fiancé. Helian Vivian's expression did not change at all. Lord Zhang should know your son's actions better than I do. These 3 times the girls were willing and unwilling. Some of them were toyed with by him. Lord Zhang, you have protected your son for too long. In the future, you should be careful when you walk at night. Who knows, someone might come to seek revenge. Chapter 684. When Lord Zhang heard Helian Vivian's words, he felt a chill run down his spine. He had never felt this way before. It was as if in front of this person, all the dirty things he had done could not be stopped. The Minister of the Ministry of Appointments was not clear about the cause and effect, but he vaguely felt that the matter was related to the fiancé. He hurriedly asked Helian Vivian, Princess, you mean that the other party is holding a grudge because his fiancé was stolen? So he prepared this series of revenge? No, to be precise, it's because my beloved son's fiancé was snatched away. As a mother who wants to make decisions for her son and everything and thinks that her son is the most perfect in the world, I really can't accept it. Why would these girls rather be together with a playboy than with her own son? Helian Vivian rubbed her fingers and curled her lips into a smile. Thinking too highly of your own son is also a kind of illness. The Minister of the Ministry of Appointments was stunned because he had never heard of such a theory before. However, Lord Zhang seemed to have been shocked by something. Old Lady Wang. The culprit is Old Lady Wang. You're not that stupid. Helian Vivian smiled, but her eyes were cold. Such a smart person. But he can't be an official. He might as well not be. Lord Zhang turned his head abruptly. Princess, you can't. Helian Vivian did not listen to him. Instead, she looked sideways at Beligaju and said in a lazy voice, He said that I can't dismiss him. The Minister of the Ministry of Appointments looked left and right. According to the ancestral rules, a woman in the harem could not interfere with the dismissal of an official. In the past, His Highness hated Empress Morong the most when she wanted to insert people into the Ministry of Appointments. He slapped Empress Morong's face in front of her face and scolded her miserably. Now that the princess was doing this, she should be violating His Highness's taboo. However, Bailey Jiaju only smiled playfully for a moment. He held Helian Weiwei's hand and squeezed it back and forth. Then he leisurely said, "Shadow, didn't you hear what the princess consort said? Take off his crown plume and throw him out." Yes. The shadow guard appeared very quickly and moved one of his hands. The black gauze hat on Lord Zhang's head was gone, and his hair was disheveled. The father and son were thrown out of the Li residence together. There were not many people in the Li residence. After all, it was already late at night. However, the people who passed by would still glance at them and whisper. Helian Vivian was very indifferent. An official is like this, and he wants to use the ancestral system to suppress me. Do you think I'm so easy to suppress? Yes. Baligaju was still squeezing the claws in his hand. His voice was so low that only the two of them could hear it. You are indeed not easy to be pinned down. Because compared to the bottom, you seem to prefer sitting on my waist, right? Helian Vivian was at a loss for words as her ears turned red. I was right. Baligaju sometimes likes to see her embarrassed appearance. He lowers his head and kisses the tip of her ear. His eyes are full of tenderness. Helian Vivian rubbed her ear and murmured, "There's still someone here." "Is there?" Baligaju raised his eyes and looked at the Minister of Personnel. No. Actually, this official doesn't even exist." The Minister of Personnel immediately covered his eyes and turned to leave. These days, officials need to be discerning. Helian Vivian looked at the Minister of Personnel's nagging back and smiled. "None of the people around you are not afraid of you." Baligaju did not comment and hugged her tightly. He smiled faintly. "Is it that funny?" Helian Vivian did not speak. She nestled in his arms and continued to laugh. The Minister of Personnel's posture when he left was too funny. The Minister of Personnel is already so old, but he still has to play along with His Highness's bad humor. How sad, ha ha ha. You're still laughing? Baligaju reached out and gently pinched Helian Vivian's chin. As he breathed, his sexy voice was like a seductive hook. Do you believe that if you continue to laugh, I will press down on you right now? Helian Vivian immediately stopped laughing. She strongly believed that His Highness was someone who did not care about the situation, environment, or location. He was someone who would do whatever he wanted. Think about it carefully. We have never done it in such a pressurizing place. As Baligaju spoke, his left hand reached into her clothes and skillfully rubbed it. He seemed to be deep in thought. Helian Vivian thought that he was thinking about something important. Unexpectedly, his next sentence was, "Let's try it when we get back." Helian Vivian, can you not use such a serious tone and say such indecent things? Let's catch her first. Helian Vivian pushed him away and smiled faintly as she kissed his flawless face. That old lady Wang is probably not human anymore. It's just a case of missing persons. It's impossible for her to create so many resentful evil spirits. Something must have happened to her. We have to understand it clearly. Moreover, I have a feeling that she has unfinished business. It was night and the fog outside was getting thicker. Ever since she saw the two young masters being caught, Yen Luer's heart was filled with guilt. She knew that she could not go out at this time, but she still wanted to go to the yamen to take a look. After all, the two young masters were caught by young Master Zhang, because she called them a feng shui master. She had to think of a way to help them. When Yen Luer thought of this, she could not sit still anymore. She put on a cotton-padded jacket and walked out. Luer's mother and father were still in the other room. They were talking about the strange things that happened these few days, so they did not notice the commotion outside. In addition, it was snowing heavily at night. The northern wind blew loudly, causing the wooden door to creak. It was more convenient for Yen Luer to go out. It was already late. There were not many people in the long alley. However, every house was lit up. Yen Luer hugged the cotton-padded jacket tightly and walked forward with her head down. She walked very quickly, turning left and entering the narrow alley. In the beginning, Yen Luer did not think much of it. She only wanted to reach the yamen as soon as possible. Later on, she felt like something was watching her from behind. That feeling made her subconsciously feel a chill run down her back. She did not dare to turn around, and felt a wave of regret. She should not have come out at this time. Someone must be following her. With that thought in mind, Yenluer walked even faster as if she was running away from something. However, she did not know that there was nothing behind her. It was all just her imagination. Right at this moment, a wooden door to her left opened. It was Old Lady Wang's house. Yenluer thought that she would be safe once she reached that place. Chapter 685. Luer, why did you come out at this time? Old Lady Wang's silhouette was hidden in the darkness. She was holding a wooden basin in her hand, looking like she was going out to sprinkle some water. Yenluer grabbed Old Lady Wang's arm and made a shushing gesture. She then said softly while panting, I think someone or something is chasing me from behind. Then come in quickly and hide for a while. Old Lady Wang said calmly as she followed Yenluer's lead and pulled her into the doorframe. Yenluer did not suspect anything. She immediately strode into the room, and even closed the door behind her. She leaned against the door and panted, feeling a lingering fear in her heart. That was too dangerous. Luckily you appeared in time, Granny. Old Lady Wang shook her head, and continued to stand in the dark. Her voice was a little slow as she said, I think the people outside won't be able to leave for a while. Come in with me first. I'll ask Ling to send you back later. Then I'll have to trouble you, Granny. Yenluer was scared out of her wits. Her forehead was covered in a thin layer of sweat. She followed Old Lady Wang into the courtyard. She did not know if it was because of the sweat, but she felt cold all around. It was the same when she entered the house. All of the Wang family's savings were used for her son's education. Old Lady Wang was a widow. She was very thrifty and did not light any charcoal. Yenluer rubbed her arms. Only then did she realize that Old Lady Wang was only wearing a single layer of clothing in the middle of winter. Was she not afraid of the cold? Have some tea. A slightly heavy voice came from above Yenluer's head. Yenluer shivered from the cold. She wanted to warm her hands with the teacup, but when she took it, she realized that the water in the cup was cold. That was strange. Maybe Old Lady Wang was reluctant to boil the water. Yenluer held the teacup and thought for a while. She really could not drink cold tea. Even the breath in the middle of winter was cold. Who would drink cold tea? What she did not expect was that Old Lady Wang actually drank it. Moreover, she drank it very naturally, as if the temperature of the water did not matter to her. The atmosphere was stagnant for a moment. Old Lady Wang was sitting on her exclusive rocking chair. Her eyes were fixed on Yenluer, but there was no expression on her face. For some reason, Yenluer felt an inexplicable sense of awkwardness. Perhaps it was because she had yet to recover from the shock earlier. She was afraid of everything she saw. The quieter the room was, the greater the fear. Yenluer had no choice but to find something to talk about. Old Lady Wang, I have some charcoal in my house that I don't have any use for. I'll send it over to you tomorrow. Also, if you don't mind, I'll bring them over for you. Old Lady Wang did not respond. Just when Yenluer thought that she had fallen asleep, a voice rang out. Only then did Old Lady Wang's hoarse voice reach them. You're the kindest person in this alley. You don't mind the poor, nor do you love the rich. You even take such good care of us, mother and son. Luer, whoever marries you will be very lucky. I'm not as good as Granny says. Yenluer smiled shyly. Granny always helps me out. We live in the same alley. That's what I should do. If it were anyone else, they would do the same. Old Lady Wang snorted coldly. They won't do that. The two girls from the Zhang family and the Li family always mock and ridicule Ling whenever they see her. They even said that Ling will never amount to anything in her life. What do they know? Ling will be the top scorer one day. It's just not time yet. I guess they're just anxious. Don't take it to heart, Granny. Yenluer's words were a little awkward. Old Lady Wang's voice was calm. You don't have to speak for them. Each one of them is more immoral than the other. Going out to meet someone in the middle of the night. If I had a daughter like that, I'd strangle them to death. They're an embarrassment to our ancestors. To be honest, Yin Luer was not good at talking to others about such things. She only said softly, "Granny, I'm not speaking for them. Some of what they said is true. Look at Brother Ling, he's old now. I can't let Granny go out and work. It's good to do some work after studying. Your Brother Ling's hands are going to be used to write memorials to the Emperor. How can he work for someone else?" Old Lady Wang's voice suddenly became louder. It sounded a little creepy in the middle of the night. Yin Luer was shocked. She quickly said, "Granny Wang, that's not what I meant. That's enough." Old Lady Wang interrupted her. "You're still young. You don't know much about this. There are very few people in our alley who know how to write. Your Brother Ling is the first. People like him should go higher." Yin Luer smiled awkwardly. "You're right, Granny Wang." Then, she looked at the sky outside. "That person should be leaving soon. I'll go out and take a look." "There's no rush." Old Lady Wang had no intention of standing up. She took another sip of tea. "Since you're here today, Granny has something to tell you." Yin Luer smiled and asked, "What is it?" "Granny, just say it." "Luer, I watched you grow up. You've been close to your Brother Ling since you were young. Initially, I didn't want to marry the Zhang family's daughter. After all, the marriage between the two families was set by your Uncle Wang when he was alive. Now that the marriage is not going to happen, and your Brother Ling is free, Granny wants to ask you, are you willing to be my Wang family's daughter-in-law?" There was finally a hint of a smile in Old Lady Wang's tone. However, the person who heard it paled. Yin Luer did not expect Old Lady Wang to ask her such a thing. She did not know how to answer, mainly because she had no feelings for Wang Ling. Moreover, Wang Ling was 8 years older than her. Why? Don't you find it too surprising? Old Lady Wang continued smiling. "Although you haven't been to school, you've always been gentle. With someone like you serving your Brother Ling, Granny can rest assured. Don't worry, even if your Brother Ling becomes successful one day and becomes a high-ranking official, there will be a place for you in his mansion. He's always been a kind person, he won't mistreat his wife." The more Yin Luer listened, the more she felt that she had to say something. "Granny, it's not what you think. My feelings for Brother Ling, I've always treated him as my brother. The two of us can't do it." All of a sudden, the temperature in the room dropped to the freezing point. Yin Luer could clearly feel that the old lady on the rocking chair had stopped smiling. Her voice was low and slightly sinister. "You mean, you're not willing to marry your Brother Ling?" Yin Luer wanted Old Lady Wang to listen to her explanation, so she walked closer. Once she was closer, she noticed the strangeness of Old Lady Wang's fingers under the candlelight. They were long and black, hidden under her tattered sleeves. It was so abnormal that it was frightening. Chapter 686. Shocked, Yin Luer was caught off guard, and the teacup in her hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Of course, the noise attracted Old Lady Wang's attention. She lifted her head slowly and looked at Yin Luer's face. She then smiled eerily. "You saw everything, didn't you?" Yin Luer pretended to be calm, but could not hide the fear in her eyes. She tried to look normal. "What are you talking about, Granny? You saw everything? Hee, I'll take my leave first. I'll think about what you said when I get back." As she spoke, Yin Luer turned to leave, but the wooden door would not open no matter how hard she tried. Yin Luer panicked and sped up her movements like a rat running for its life. The old voice that sounded like a dead person was getting closer. "Luer, you've really disappointed me. I didn't expect you to be the same as those girls, despising the poor and loving the rich. No matter how good your appearance is, you're only interested in those external conditions." This time, Yin Luer did not answer Old Lady Wang. She shook the wooden door with all her might, only thinking of escaping from this terrifying place. She tried to call for help, but she felt a burst of weakness in her body. Her voice was also very weak. It was the cup of tea she had just drunk. Something was spiked in that cup of tea. Yin Luer slid down the wooden door and fell to the ground. Her fingers could not exert any strength, and only her consciousness remained. She watched as old lady Wang's face that was full of dead spots came closer and closer. Her body shrunk inwards desperately. Old lady Wang slowly raised her arm. At that moment, a man dressed like a scholar suddenly stood in front of Yin Luer, blocking her way. He looked at old lady Wang with pleading eyes. Mother, you know that Luer is not that kind of person. She probably hasn't thought it through yet. Please give her some time to think about it. Brother Ling. Yin Luer felt that she had finally met a normal person. She grabbed Wang Ling's arm as if asking for help and asked softly, "What's wrong with Granny? Her hand and those things on her face?" Wang Ling did not know how to answer Yin Luer. He only shook his head. Yin Luer was so anxious that her face turned pale. She continued, "Brother Ling, I know you've always listened to Granny, but..." Old lady Wang did not hear Yin Luer's words. She only glanced at Wang Ling, looking very displeased. However, he finally stopped his action of pinching her, and his eyes darkened. "Ling, you're good at everything, but you're not ruthless enough." Old lady Wang laughed coldly and said to Yin Luer, "Forget it by right. A girl like you has no right to be A Ling's wife, but A Ling likes you. Moreover, I don't have much time left. You don't have to go home and think about it. Tonight is an auspicious day. A Ling, go and bring the 2 sets of wedding clothes that I've sewn, one for yourself and the other for Luer, seeing how she's always taking care of me. If she's obedient and gets married, we'll be a family in the future." Wang Ling did not move, as if he was hesitating. Yin Luer grabbed his sleeve. "Brother Ling, please let me go back. Getting married is not a small matter after all. Now that Granny is in trouble, you can't follow suit, Brother Ling." "Luer." Wang Ling opened his mouth to interrupt her, and held Yin Luer's hand looking anxious. "Actually, I've liked you since the last time you sent the quilted jacket over. You were close to me when we were young. I know you have feelings for me too, right? You don't have to care about what others say, although I have nothing now. But one day, I'll become a big official and show them. Just treat it as fulfilling one of my mother's wishes. We'll go through the wedding ceremony tonight." Yin Luer widened her eyes, looking at Wang Ling as if he was crazy. "Brother Ling, you know that I don't have that kind of feelings for you." As if hurt by Yin Luer's reaction, Wang Ling's eyes dimmed, but he refused to give up. He reached out to hug her. "Feelings can be cultivated, Luer." Yin Luer felt disgusted, and reached out to separate him. "Brother Ling, after so many years of studying, have you only learned how to force people?" Wang Ling was an honest man after all. Other than imagining everything to be perfect, he did not have any bad intentions. However, to be honest, not many girls would be willing to marry a man like him. He did nothing but study all day long. He was ambitious but not hardworking enough. Moreover, he was well taken care of by old lady Wang. He did not know what hard work was. However, Yin Luer's words did make him restrain himself. He stood aside, and did not do anything else. His intention of coming out was to protect Yin Luer. But he could not understand why Luer would reject him, so he could not help but feel disappointed and angry. Old lady Wang's face turned abnormally scary because of Yin Luer's words. "Ling, don't waste your time with this woman. Hurry up and bring the wedding dress over, and get married quickly." Those 2 people today were not normal. They even disguised themselves as feng shui masters, and went to the Yin family. I suspect that they were originally from the government, but their methods were much better than the government's, and they were smart too. Just to be safe, after you get married today, I'll leave tomorrow, so that they won't come back to find out anything and affect you. I don't have many wishes in this life. As long as I can see you get married, I'll leave in peace. Towards the end of her speech, old lady Wang's voice softened, and she seemed to be in a good mood. "Coincidentally, today is a good day for you to get married. Luer, I advise you to cooperate. Otherwise, these people will end up like you." As she spoke, she pulled the curtain behind her. 3 corpses were hung on the beam, all of them pale, their faces frighteningly familiar. Yin Luer took a heavy step back in fear. The strength that she had gathered with much difficulty seemed to have been used up all at once. Her pupils shook violently due to fear. Even her breathing became hurried and nervous. She would never have thought that the culprit behind the recent disappearances would be old lady Wang, who lived next to her house. Yen Luer felt as if her entire heart was being squeezed by something. It was sinking with all its might. It was terrifyingly cold. She still had a chance to escape earlier, but now that she knew everything, she had nowhere to run. Even Wang Ling would not let her go, unless they became a family. Her blood had reversed to a certain point. Yen Luer was only left with fear. She did not even know when a crimson wedding dress was draped over her. Chapter 687. The color of the wedding dress was too dark, and had an indescribable color. It looked a little like blood. It was horrifying. First bow to the heavens and earth. Old Lady Wang sat on the rocking chair, and played the role of a matchmaker. However, it was not a beautiful scene, because her face was starting to turn green. It was better when she did not smile. But when she did, it made people feel even more sinister. Yen Luer did not want to bend down. She was trembling when she knelt on the ground. Wang Ling thought about it and apologized. He then held Yen Luer's neck and said, "Luer, believe me, there's nothing wrong with marrying me." Yen Luer shook her head, tears flowing down her cheeks. No. Wang Ling could not bear to see her like this, but he gritted his teeth and pressed his hand down. Once a woman was married and lost her chastity, she would be loyal to him. He really liked Luer. The thought of Luer becoming his wife filled him with excitement. Let's do it this way. I'll take this opportunity to make her marry me. Yen Luer was still struggling. The people in the courtyard did not notice that the courtyard was surrounded. They were all first-class officers. Each of them walked very lightly. After the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs finished setting up the scene, he said to Hellion Vivian, "I've followed your instructions and got them to lie in ambush. All of them are holding the dog blood red rope in their hands. All of them know light body technique, so we did not alert the enemy. Should we rush in quickly and kill her when she's unprepared?" Hellion Vivian looked at the wooden door and thought about it. She shook her head in the end. No. Why? The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs did not understand. Was there something that he did not do well enough? Hellion Vivian stroked the large black dog that was as tall as her. She said slowly, "Because I'm not sure if the person in her hands is dead or alive. We can't sneak in or attack. If she has a hostage, we'll be in a passive position." The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs could not help but admire Hellion Vivian's thinking. At this point, the Princess Consort was still so thoughtful. "You guys lie in ambush," Hellion Vivian commanded with a clear mind. "No matter what rushes out later, don't touch it directly. Hold the dog blood red rope in your hands tightly. Don't leave your position." "Yes," the officers replied in a low voice. Hellion Vivian turned to look at the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. "Surly the people at the front door, retreat to the left and right and hide yourselves. Her Highness, and I will knock on the door." This official will also follow His Highness and Princess Consort. This official is really worried about you guys going in. Seeing how Wang Fei was capturing people, even using the dog blood red rope, they were definitely going to deal with something evil. How could he let Wang Fei and His Highness go in without a guard? What if something happened? If he followed them in, he would be able to ward off the disaster. The Minister of Personnel's gaze was especially sincere. Baligija glanced back at him. The Minister of Personnel Affairs immediately said, "Your Highness, this official's 8 characters are heavy. Since young, those dirty things have been circling around this official. This official? You have a big belly. One look, and I can tell that you are an official." Baligiju slowly interrupted his subordinate. The officers almost laughed out loud, but it was obvious from their facial expressions that they were having a hard time holding back their laughter. The Minister of Personnel Affairs was speechless. Was his belly very big? All right, it was a little big. But Your Highness, do you have to say it out loud? The Minister of Personnel Affairs, who cared a lot about his appearance, looked around warningly. He could not withstand His Highness's poisonous tongue, and automatically gave up on the idea of entering the courtyard. He stuck to the corner of the wall, and prepared to ambush. But his belly was too big. Even if he stuck to the wall, one could still see the outline. The officers could only work to the left and right to let him suck in his stomach. When everything was in place, Hellion Vivian reached out and gently knocked on the wooden door of the Wang family. Bang bang! Instantly, Wang Ling, who was about to bow to his parents, froze and looked at old lady Wang abruptly. Mother, why are you panicking? It's just someone knocking on the door. Old lady Wang frowned, but compared to Wang Ling, she was much calmer. This was because she knew that even if there was an investigation, that damned brat from the Zhang family would stand in front of her. She had nothing to be afraid of. Unlike Madame Wang and her son, Yin Luer's face finally showed a look of desire after going through a period of despair. She opened her mouth, wanting to make some noise, even if it was just a little noise. Old lady Wang looked at her coldly. Her fingers quickly reached out and pressed all the sleeping pills that she had stored earlier on Yin Luer's mouth and nose. Yin Luer reached out her hand. She only moved a little before fainting. Old lady Wang looked very calm, probably because she was used to doing this. Wang Ling, on the other hand, was sweating profusely. It was obvious that he was scared, especially when there was someone knocking on the door. Old lady Wang looked at him with a vicious look in her eyes. Ling, listen to me. Nothing will happen. Luer has just disappeared. No one would have found out so quickly. Someone must have come to investigate. Didn't the authorities come to investigate 2 days ago? It's just a formality. As long as you behave normally and answer all their questions, there won't be any major issues. When you open the door later, ask them what they are here for. If they are here to investigate, open the door for them. Old lady Wang paused as if she thought of something. She continued, if they say nothing, it means that something is wrong. Then you don't have to open the door. Wang Ling was still a little flustered when he heard old lady Wang's words. But he knew what to do. At this point, there was no turning back. He was going to be the top scorer in the future. He could not have any stains on him. Moreover, 3 people had died. If the officials found out anything, his mother would be beheaded. He would definitely not allow that to happen. As long as he followed his mother's instructions and answered properly, there would not be any problems. This was because no one would link the disappearance to the Wang clan. It must be fine. Wang Ling wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. He took a deep breath, bent down and picked up a book from the wooden table. He then walked out of the house. Who is it? Wang Ling tried to make his voice sound natural. However, Hellion Vivian, who was familiar with psychology, could hear his real emotions from his rapid and unsteady breathing. This Wang Ling was very uneasy. Could it be that something had happened in the courtyard? Hellion Weiwei originally wanted to ask for a private visit, but she immediately tossed it aside and quickly changed to another excuse. She said through the wooden door, "We're from the government. We're here to understand the situation. We need to talk about Zhang Yu in detail." Chapter 688. When Wang Ling heard Zhang Yu's name, his tensed nerves immediately relaxed. His mother had already said that if someone wanted to investigate this matter, Zhang Yu would be the main suspect. It seemed that these people were indeed here to understand the situation. He had to act natural. Wang Ling's hand that was holding the wooden door paused. He took a deep breath before opening the door. When he saw Hellion Vivian and Beligaju standing outside the door, Wang Ling was obviously stunned and raised his guard. "Why are you here?" The minister of the Ministry of Appointments wanted to speak, but Hellion Vivian put her left hand behind her back and gestured for him to shut up. Then she said casually, "Actually, we are not feng shui masters, but people from the government. The imperial court attached great importance to this case, so they sent us here for a visit. I know that there are many things that the people are unwilling to say, because they are afraid of getting into trouble. But don't worry, no matter how powerful this criminal's family background is, we will handle it impartially. This time, we came here in the middle of the night to understand Zhang Yu's true situation." As Hellion Vivian spoke, Wang Ling's rising vigilance disappeared. He was hesitating whether to let them in or not. Then he heard old lady Wang say from inside the room, "Ah Ling, let the 2 lords in." If I don't say some things, my conscience will feel uneasy. Old Lady Wang had her own reasons for letting Hellion Vivian and the others in. First, if she didn't let the two officers in at this time, it would make people suspicious. After all, her son was going to be the top scorer in the future. She couldn't let her son have any stains because of such a small matter. Second, she could use this opportunity to continue to lead the criminal to the second young master of the Zhang family. Third, not long after, the Yin family would find out that Lu'er was missing. Since these two officers were here, she could have an alibi. At that time, no one would suspect that she kidnapped Lu'er. As for Lu'er, she was confident that she could hide her well. That was why the far-sighted old lady Wang spoke at this time. Seeing that his mother had agreed, Wang Ling naturally didn't have any objections. He moved aside to allow Hellion Vivian and Beligaju to enter the courtyard. After some thought, he turned around and locked the wooden door. The loud noise made the Minister of Personnel, who was squatting in the corner, feel very uneasy. He didn't know what would happen in the courtyard. Once the door was closed, he couldn't see anything. In addition, the murderer this time was very likely to be a ghost. Could His Highness and the others really handle it? Hellion Vivian also noticed Wang Ling's abnormal actions. She raised her eyebrows, but did not say anything. She only glanced at Beligaju beside her. His Highness's walking posture was still very noble and indifferent, as if it didn't matter to him whether the door was closed or not. When Wang Ling saw this, he couldn't help but feel a little unbalanced. This made him feel even more uncomfortable than seeing Zhang Yu. This was because Zhang Yu had too many flaws that he could find, and the man in front of her seemed to be too perfect. The aura emanating from his body was something that he couldn't reach no matter how hard he tried. So what if he had some money? When he became the top scorer in the future, these officials of the Ministry of Personnel would be nothing. When Wang Ling thought of this, he straightened his back and led Hellion Vivian and Beligaju into the house. The house looked very normal, other than the fact that there was no fire, and that it was a little cold and shabby. It looked like an ordinary house. Hellion Weiwei did not ask Blackie to come out because the evil aura on its body was too strong. If it came out, it would alert the enemy. She simply asked a certain highness beside her through her consciousness stream. Did you smell anything? Hellion Vivian believed that in some aspects, His Highness' sense of smell might be more sensitive than Little Black's. How could someone as smart as His Highness not understand what she meant? He glanced over, and Hellion Vivian immediately retracted her claws, looking very obedient. This made Beligage's mood very good. Even his tone had a hint of a smile. Nothing. Hellion Vivian frowned. Could it be that her previous guess was wrong? Old Lady Wang was very polite. When she saw them come in, she stood up from the rocking chair. Because of the dim light, she couldn't be seen clearly. It's cold in the house, and there's no hot water. Please take a seat. My Ling has been an honest child since he was young. He doesn't know how to interact with others. Did he offend the two of you just now? Old Lady Wang spoke very carefully. She looked like a commoner trying to curry favor with the officials. If it wasn't Hellion Vivian, anyone else would have been fooled by her. Perhaps this was also the reason why after the first missing person case, the officers didn't find anything strange about the Wang family, even after they investigated every household. However, Hellion Weiwei noticed a small detail, and that was what she was wearing. It was a cotton garment that was worn in autumn. It looked very thin, and did not even have the slightest bit of wind resistance effect. Before coming here, Hellion Vivian had more or less understood the mother and son pair. Wang Ling was a typical Phoenix man in modern society. He thought that all girls liked other people because of their money, but they didn't like him because they didn't realize their own potential. On the surface, he looked like a gentle scholar, but in reality, he was hiding a lot of jealousy in his heart. However, there was one thing that he was especially filial to Old Lady Wang. Perhaps it was because Wang Ling's father passed away when he was young, so whenever he had something, he would immediately think of giving it to Old Lady Wang. But now, Wang Ling had at least 2 cotton-padded coats on him, but he didn't have one left for Old Lady Wang. When Hellion Vivian came in, she noticed that Old Lady Wang didn't tremble at all because of the cold. In psychology, there was a term called behavior observation. Anyone could lie with their words and act with their expressions, but their body language was often uncontrollable. They would do what they were supposed to do. From Old Lady Wang's current behavior, Hellion Vivian could conclude that she wasn't cold at all. In the capital, which was more than 10 degrees Celsius below zero, she actually didn't feel cold at all. This was the biggest difference. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes, but didn't show her feeling. Instead, she went along with Old Lady Wang's words and smiled. Old lady, you don't have to be nervous. We're just here to understand the situation. After all, in this alley, the one who knows Zhang Yu the best should be your Wang family. Old Lady Wang stood on the spot and sighed. Originally, we really shouldn't say anything about the Zhang family. That day, the two officials were present, and Old Lady Zhang said everything that should be said. The Zhang and Wang families aren't fated to be together, and our Zhang family won't let a woman who has had relations with another man into our family. I don't know about other things, but there's one thing that I haven't said. Now that I think about it, it might be helpful to you. Chapter 689. Oh. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows with interest as her gaze landed on a piece of pink cloth under the stool. Madame Wang and her son would never wear clothes of this color. Someone must have been here earlier. While Hellion Weiwei was analyzing the situation, she did not forget to look into Old Lady Wang's eyes and asked, "What's the matter?" The day Linger disappeared. She seemed to have quarreled with the second young master of the Zhang family. Old Madame Wang lowered her head as she spoke. Actually, it's very embarrassing to say this. Our Wang family has never done anything wrong. Wang Ling studied harder than anyone else, and will definitely have a bright future. However, Ling just had to follow young Master Zhang. In the end, the two of them quarreled, and the second young master of the Zhang family didn't seem to want to continue with her. He said that if Ling continued to pester him, he would send someone to teach the Zhang family a lesson. Old Madame Wang didn't continue speaking. She knew that by saying this, the two officers in front of her would be able to link many things together. As expected, Hellion Vivian nodded and smiled faintly. Old Madame Wang, what you said is very helpful to the case. We know what to do now. My lord, please don't tell the Zhang family that I was the one who said this. Old Madame Wang even added this sentence when Hellion Vivian and the others stood up, as if she was really afraid of offending the Zhang family. Hellion Vivian's smile deepened and said meaningfully, "Don't worry, I won't tell the Zhang family about this. They don't need to know." That's good, that's good. Old Madame Wang seemed to be relieved and nodded. She said to her son, "Ling, it's dark outside. Send the two milords out." Okay. Wang Ling responded and walked towards Hellion Vivian, who knew that when he approached the two officers, he saw a blur in front of him, and the multi-faced person actually grabbed his neck. Wang Ling froze and looked at Hellion Vivian with a face full of anger. "What are you doing?" Even old Madame Wang was a little anxious by this sudden change. "My lord, what do you mean by this? Why are you grabbing our Ling's neck?" Hellion Vivian curled her lips and said to old Madame Wang, "Old Madame Wang, the time for acting is over. Your acting skills are very good, and you are very smart. However, as long as you do something, there will be traces left behind. Release the girl that you have captured, and your son might still be able to live." What was the best way to make a criminal submit? Of course, it was to hold on to her most important. When she was in modern times, she wasn't a good person. Of course, the most effective was the most of the most effective methods. The moment she saw the shards of pink cloth on the ground, she had already made up her mind to kidnap Wang Ling in exchange for a hostage. The moment the Wang Vivians of the Wang's assess from the dry coldness just now, it had turned into an uncomfortably gloomy coldness. A gust of wind blew in from an unknown source, causing Old Lady Wang's hair to flutter. The dark spots and wrinkles that were covered by her hair adorned her deathly pale face. It was indescribably terrifying. "I originally wanted to be polite to you, but since you are so aggressive, then there is no need to be friendly anymore. I warn you, you better let my son go. Otherwise, not to mention those girls, I won't even let you guys go. As if it was affected by the soaring resentment, a rumbling sound was heard. Lightning struck down, and the entire sky above the Wang family's courtyard turned pitch black. It was as if something was slowly gathering here. A large group of rats ran over from the corner of the wall. The Minister of Personnel and the surrounding officials felt an indescribable sense of fear and uneasiness when they saw this. Helian Weiwei also wrinkled her shapely eyebrows. She'd never seen anyone with such a strong aura of resentment. The resentment doesn't just belong to her. Bailey Jiaju glanced at the sky outside the window. His voice was neither fast nor slow. Today is a cloudy day. The gate of hell is wide open. At noon, the malicious ghosts that the netherworld cannot control will gather here. We must think of a way to prevent them from being infected. Otherwise, in order to control the source of infection, the netherworld will most likely close all the doors that are connected to the human world in advance. Even the path of reincarnation will be locked. As Helian Weiwei listened, a silver knife appeared in her hand and slashed Wang Ling's face directly. She looked at Old Lady Wang calmly and said in a calm voice, "All right, I'd like to see if you're faster at summoning malicious spirits or my knife. Next, I'll strangle your throat." After all, human lives are nothing in Old Lady Wang's eyes. "You heard Ah Ling. Good, good. Since you want to die so much, I'll let you have a taste of being haunted by malicious ghosts." Old Madame Wang roared. Her voice was sharp and hoarse. She stretched her black fingernails forward. The surrounding black fog seemed to have gathered and rushed toward Helian Vivian. Old Madame Wang's murderous aura was stronger than ever. Even the black fog expanded more than twice its original size. These malicious ghosts were now following Old Madame Wang's orders. If she asked them to possess someone, they would immediately haunt that person to death. Originally, she did not want to touch these two officials. After all, killing an official was different from killing a normal person. It would definitely cause more trouble, but she couldn't care less. These two people gave her too much of a sense of danger, especially the shorter one. He was too smart, so smart that it made people feel scared. In addition, he actually hurt her son. It was simply unforgivable. No one could escape from these ghosts. After they died, she would let these malicious ghosts take over their bodies and report everything about Zhang Yu to the higher-ups. Once the case was over, she would let the malicious ghosts leave their bodies. In this way, no one would know about what happened today. Everything was done by Zhang Yu. It had nothing to do with the Wang family. Her son would also get married and become the top scorer in the exam without a stain on his record. Old Madame Wang was indeed smart and thoughtful. However, what she did not know was that the two people standing in front of her were not normal people. Just as she was smiling at her perfect plan, the malicious ghosts that were charging toward the two people suddenly stopped in their tracks, as if they were frightened by something unknown. Old Madame Wang frowned. What was going on? Once again, she used the resentment in her body. However, she realized that the malicious ghosts still did not dare to move forward. At this moment, she realized that the official who had not spoken all this time had curled his thin lips into a faint smile. His eyes were as cold as the ice in winter, and flashed with an unusual golden light. "Who are you?" Chapter 690. Old Lady Wang felt as if something was slipping out of her control. The man did not even look at her. He turned his handsome and noble face to the side and bit the black glove on his hand. At that moment, it was as if an ancient Sanskrit hymn could be heard from afar. Piece after piece of black feathers slowly fell to the ground. The evil aura emitted from his body made all the dark creatures tremble. Old Lady Wang only saw him move in the blink of an eye. In just a blink of an eye, his hand had pierced through the hearts of 5 malicious ghosts. As if he had been burned by something, the malicious ghosts screamed in agony and were quickly turned into puddles of black liquid. After Baligaju had done all this, he frowned slightly and took off his glove, throwing it aside. From the beginning to the end, His actions had been so elegant, as if he had not just killed any malicious ghosts. He had only touched something dirty and needed to clean his hands. It was not just Wang Ling. Even old lady Wang, who was no longer alive, began to tremble violently. She was filled with fear towards this man in front of her. She never thought that he would be so powerful. He was even more ruthless than she was. He killed as he pleased, as if any person or ghost was just a plaything in his hands. You're an exorcist? This was the only answer old lady Wang could think of. However, she felt that something was not right. This man's aura did not have the slightest bit of holiness like a gentleman. Instead, his elegance was emitting an ancient evil. That evil made her legs go weak. She only wanted to bend her knees and worship him. However, the man only looked at her indifferently, as if she did not even have the right to speak to him. Hellion Vivian obviously knew that with a certain highness taking action, any malicious ghost could be dealt with. However, in order to completely destroy the source of the pollution, she must first find those missing girls. Until now, Hellion Weiwei still did not know what method old lady Wang used to create the aura of resentment that could infect evil spirits. However, the only thing she was sure of was that it definitely had something to do with the missing girls. She had to find them quickly. Soon a large number of malicious ghosts would arrive. Once they fell under old lady Wang's control, the officers outside would most likely be possessed by them. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "Granny Wang, it's time to tell me your choice. Hand over those girls. Otherwise, my next stab won't be so gentle." Why? Why are you treating us like this? Old lady Wang knew that she couldn't win against them, and her son was being held hostage by them. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You don't care about those big cases, but you care about us. Even if you want to arrest someone, arrest me. What does that have to do with my son? He can be the top scorer in the future." Hellion Vivian glanced at old lady Wang and said calmly, "He won't be the top scorer." "What did you say?" Old lady Wang's eyes suddenly turned fierce. Hellion Vivian patted Wang Ling's face with the dagger. "There are countless people like him in the War Dragon dynasty. There are many more who are more talented than him, more hardworking than him, and more determined than him. Why should he be the top scorer? You're the same as those girls. You only know how to be mean to my son and talk bad about him. He's filial and serious in his studies. Why can't he be the top scorer? You see that we're poor, despise the poor and favor the rich. You don't have any sense of shame. That's why you trample on us. You all deserve to die." Old lady Wang really wanted to strangle the person in front of her to death. Hellion Vivian sneered, "There's a drought at the border. Those people are much poorer than you. They don't even have food to eat. However, they never complain like you do. If they have the time, why don't they think about how to become stronger? If you want others to like you, you have to be worth it. Since he was young, he hasn't earned a single cent by himself. He can't do anything without you, his mother. He's also very proud and arrogant. You mother and son are also funny. You don't like this and that, and you talk about how girls are like. You even expect them to marry you. If they don't want you, you say that they despise the poor and favor the rich. Even if that's the case, you should live a good life first before criticizing others. For someone like your son, even if he becomes the top scorer, he won't be a good official. Not to mention that he has a mother like you. His selfish and narrow-minded mind will never find fault with himself when something happens. His jealousy is so strong that it's scary. Sooner or later, there will be problems. What right do you have to say that about my son? What do you mean sooner or later? What jealousy is so scary? My son is the kindest and most righteous person in the world. You just can't stand my son doing well." The more old lady Wang spoke, the more agitated she became. She took a step forward. Hellion Vivian looked at the fluttering bed curtain behind her. Her eyes flashed, but her tone was still very calm. "Whether you're rich or poor, the most important thing is how parents teach their children. For example, old lady Wang, you keep saying that this girl is cheap, and that the boy only knows how to use money to oppress others. It's very easy for you to affect Wang Ling, who is by your side. Children are like their parents because their parents' words and actions affect them. You said that your son is kind and righteous? A truly kind and righteous person won't let his mother harm others." Old Lady Wang, if I'm not wrong, you should have died a long time ago. It wasn't even winter when you died. Now you're just a corpse. You. This was the second time Old Lady Wang was shocked by today's matter. How did you know? Ever since she heard about the matter between Zhang Ling, and the second young master of the Zhang family, she caught a cold that night. Later, Old Lady Zhang came to ridicule her Ling for not having anything, and was pestering her Ling like a toad. She thought that she might as well break off the engagement as soon as possible to save some face for both families. That day, everyone in the alley knew about the scandal of the Wang family. Her illness became even worse. In less than 2 days, she coughed up blood, and her soul left her body. At this moment, a man in a white robe walked in. She had never seen such a gentle young master. He asked her if she wanted to teach those who looked down on her and her son a lesson. Of course she wanted to, even in her dreams. She didn't just want those evil people to receive their retribution. She wanted to see her son get married and have children. The young master didn't ask for anything in return. He only taught her how to commit the crime. Chapter 691. She was originally worried that killing someone would harm her son. But after hearing the young master's words, she realized that this was an absolutely perfect plan. Not only could she kill with a borrowed knife, she could even uproot the Zhang family. There was no reason for her not to agree. Of course, she was willing to do anything. Moreover, the young master who saved her had even extended her lifespan. Even if she died, she could still move like a living person. She used more than 10 days to observe the time when Zhang Yu met those girls. During this time, her body was constantly changing. But other than Ling, no one else noticed. This person in front of her actually guessed that she was dead. Compared to Old Lady Wang's shock, Hellion Vivian was as calm as usual. Old Lady Wang, do you really think that you're no different from a living person? Your fingers are black and long, and there are death spots on your face. These are signs that only appear after a person dies. Because you're a corpse, you can't even feel the most basic cold and heat. You've always been wearing the clothes you wore before you died. Old Lady Wang's eyes widened as she listened. Hellion Weiwei continued calmly. It's been about 40 to 50 days since the end of autumn. As your son, it's impossible that Wang Ling doesn't know that you're in danger and what you're thinking. However, he didn't stop you. Or rather, it's not obvious that he stopped you, because deep down in his heart, he also wants those people to die. As Hellion Weiwei spoke, her gaze fell on Wang Ling, who was in her hands. Wang Ling finally stopped pretending to be honest and courteous. He shouted at the top of his voice, "They deserve to die. That pair of bastards." Zhang Yu took advantage of his family's power and influence. Zhang Ling, is even more despicable. And those girls who only have money in their eyes and nothing else. These people don't deserve to live in this world. If that's the case, why did you only dare to kill Zhang Ling, and not Zhang Yu? Hellion Vivian laughed mockingly. To put it bluntly, you're still afraid of him. He stole your fiancé. But you don't even dare to do anything. You just rely on your mother to do this and that for you. If you're really a man with guts, then show others what you're made of. Look at what you're doing. You only know how to bully the weak. Are you going to kill all the girls who look down on you and don't want to marry you? You said that others don't deserve to live in this world. What about you? Even an irresponsible and lazy piece of trash like you can live a good life. So why aren't others qualified to live? All of Wang Ling's words were blocked by Hellion Vivian. His face turned green, but he could not refute a single word. The word trash was like a slap to the face, piercing through all of his self-esteem. Wang Ling clenched his fists and said, "If I was born in the Zhang family, I would have been the top scorer. I wouldn't have ended up like this." Perhaps she was shocked by Hellion Vivian's words. Or perhaps her son's reaction was beyond Old Lady Wang's expectations. After all, her son had always disapproved of her actions and had tried to stop her. However, she did not expect that her son's resentment was even greater than hers. He even did not want her as his mother. Old Lady Wang's hands dropped. She never thought that her son would have such thoughts. Hellion Vivian's smile turned colder. A person like you, Even if you were to change your family background, you would only be the second Zhang Yu. Who did your mother do so much for? You sure are good. You're quite an ingrate. Wang Ling's face turned red from Helian Vivian's words. Looking at old lady Wang's obvious sadness, he hurriedly explained. Mother, that's not what I meant. Old lady Wang shook her head, tears rolling down her face. Son, I don't blame you. You're right. If you were born in the Zhang family, you wouldn't have ended up like this. I'm sorry. I don't have that much money to help you build connections. Towards the end, old lady Wang's voice was choked with sobs. She covered her face with one hand and her shoulders were trembling. Old lady Wang, how long are you going to find excuses for your son's failure? Helian Weiwei looked at him indifferently. Actually, you know better than anyone else why your son has become like this. You also know that the things he usually does are completely useless. He might as well find a job as a teacher. However, the people around him have already looked down on him. You feel that if even you give up on him, he will definitely be in a lot of pain. That's why you've been deceiving yourself to this extent. Old lady Wang didn't say anything, but she cried even harder. Helian Vivian's tone didn't change. Everyone wants revenge. You can do whatever you want to Zhang Ling and Zhang Yu, but you want to kill those girls just because they don't want to marry your son. Old lady Wang, you don't have a daughter. If someone treats your daughter like this, can you tolerate it? Don't think that your own child is a child, and other people's children are grass. In this world, no one owes you anything. Helian Vivian's last sentence made old lady Wang collapse. The viciousness on her face disappeared, leaving only pleading. I can tell you everything. Can you spare my son's life? He didn't do anything. Even if he wanted to, he was just thinking about it. He has never hurt anyone. I'm the one who planted all these bad karma. I'm the one who should go to hell. Alright. Helian Vivian's gaze didn't change. But you won't be forgiven for your sins. Do what you have to do. It was true. If the Zhang family hadn't bullied others with their family's power and influence, if old lady Zhang hadn't gone overboard with her words, the tragedy wouldn't have developed to this point. But this wasn't an excuse to kill innocent people. Someone had to pay for the deaths of those young girls. Old lady Wang sniffled and nodded. I know that I've wronged those girls. We're all children who live on the same street. I don't know what happened to me. How could I be so heartless? The crying grew louder. Old lady Wang's voice was filled with guilt and regret. They're in a secret passage behind me. Other than Luer, who's still alive, the others are already. Sob, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Helian Vivian listened to old lady Wang's words. After letting go of Wang Ling, she walked over. She reached out and pulled. 3 corpses hanging in the air appeared in her sight. Yin Lu sat in the middle of the corpses. She was still wearing a wedding gown. The color of the wedding gown was like the blood that flowed out of a person's body. It was very uncomfortable to look at. Helian Vivian instinctively felt that the wedding gown was not that simple. Chapter 692. What's with this wedding gown? Helian Vivian turned around and asked Old Lady Wang. Old Lady Wang had a guilty look on her face. I thought Luer was not bad, so I wanted her to marry Ah Ling. She didn't agree, so I forced her to wear the wedding gown. That's not what I'm asking. Helian Vivian looked at the wedding gown on Yin Luer, her eyes darkening. I want to know how this wedding gown came about. It doesn't look right. A trace of astonishment flashed through Old Lady Wang's eyes. She smiled bitterly and said, It's indeed not ordinary. This wedding dress was sewn by me personally. I listened to young master's words and bought a white cloth. I used the blood of those girls to dye it red. The young master said that as long as 2 people wear the wedding gown and go through the ceremony together, the girl will love the man for the rest of her life and never leave him. Upon hearing that, Helian Vivian stopped what she was doing and exchanged glances with Beligaju. This was where the resentment gathered. The dead girls did not rest in peace at all. Whether it was their souls or resentment, they were all locked in this wedding gown. That was why it affected the dead souls that passed by. Once a soul came close, it would be infected. However, because it was not a direct contact, There was no immediate reaction. Instead, it took a few days for resentment to form. Then the resentful souls would infect other dead souls. It was no wonder the king of hell wanted to shut down the entire underworld. Under the circumstances where the source of the infection could not be found, who knew how many dead souls were being infected in a day? The source had to be eliminated. Only then the resentment would disappear completely. The worst thing now was that Yin Luer was wearing the wedding gown. Hellion Vivian was not sure if the current Yin Luer was still the original Yin Luer. It was very possible that the resentment hidden in the wedding gown had already spread to Yin Luer, but it was not certain. She did not know if Yin Luer was possessed or not, because the other person was also wearing a wedding gown. Hellion Vivian turned to look at Wang Ling. Her thoughts had always been tight and clear, even at a time like this. Marriage was a matter of two people. Since Yin Luer was wearing a bridal gown, Wang Ling must be wearing a bridal gown. One of them must have been tainted with resentment. Evil spirits, especially when a few ghosts had been devoured and condensed into evil spirits, were usually more cunning than humans. It would not obediently stay in the wedding dress and wait for her to burn it. Just when she realized that something was wrong with the wedding dress, the evil spirit must have possessed someone. Actually, it was very easy to get rid of the resentment. All he had to do was to burn the wedding gown and kill Yin Luer and Wang Ling. But Yin Luer was innocent. Hellion Vivian didn't have the right to decide the life and death of a kind-hearted girl when she wasn't sure if she was possessed. He couldn't bring himself to do it. Therefore, she had to figure out who the evil spirit in the wedding dress was. Was it Wang Ling or Yin Luer? Wei Wei's pair of eyes shrewdly and carefully slid past the two people's bodies. Next, she tried to wake Yin Luer up. Hellion Vivian's methods were never gentle. Especially in a situation like this where time was tight, she was even more unrestrained. She took the cold water on the table and splashed it on Yin Luer. This was a method to wake a person up quickly. Hellion Vivian did not only save time, she could also check if Yin Luer was possessed. This was because even if a person was in a deep sleep, their skin and senses were still awake. If she didn't wake up after being splashed with cold water, there would definitely be a problem. However, even if she woke up, she would not be completely cleared of suspicion, because the other party could be faking it. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes, not letting go of any expression on Yin Luer's face. She first grunted, then opened her eyes. When she saw Old Lady Wang, she was obviously terrified and stepped back. "Don't come over, don't come over." Old Lady Wang opened her mouth, her face full of tears. "Luer, I'm sorry." Hellion Vivian did not say anything. She continued to observe Yin Luer. Yin Luer then saw Hellion Vivian standing in front of her. It's you, the feng shui master." Then she saw Beligaju. She seemed to be relieved. "That's great, you're here to save me." Hellion Vivian grunted in acknowledgement, but said something irrelevant. "Wang Ling, Yin Luer, take off your wedding clothes." Wang Ling's expression changed. "How did you know I'm wearing wedding clothes too?" When he went to open the door just now, he purposely put on a long cotton-padded jacket. No one should be able to tell what he was wearing underneath. Hellion Vivian glanced at him. "There must be a bridegroom if there's a bridesmaid. Why? You don't want to take it off." "No, I just want to know, why do you want us to take off our wedding clothes?" Wang Ling laughed coldly. "If you want to interrogate us, you can just arrest us and lock us in the yamen. What is this? I'm starting to doubt if you're really an imperial envoy here to investigate." Old Lady Wang had never thought of this. Now that she heard her son's words, her gaze towards Hellion Vivian was filled with suspicion. Hellion Vivian did not waste time with them. She walked straight to Beligaju's side. She reached out and touched the man's waist. Beligaju did not stop her. His thin lips were half-curved, handsome and devilish. Hellion Vivian felt for a long time, but did not find anything. She was wondering if he did not bring his token. She saw the man slowly spread his fair and slender fingers, his movements elegant, his voice clear. "You're looking for this?" Hellion Vivian grunted. "Why didn't you tell me earlier that the token was with you? Seeing how you were touching it so enthusiastically, how could I disturb my wife?" Beligaju's voice carried a charming smile when he said the last few words. "After all, I'm the one being kept. Of course I have to follow the rules. Helene Vivian. Rules my ass. He was clearly taking advantage of her in another way. Shameless, too shameless. Helene Vivian naturally would not argue with His Highness. No crow in the world was as black as His Highness. With an indifferent expression, she took the token from Wang Ling and waved her hand. She said to Wang Ling, "You are also a scholar, so you should be able to recognize the words on this." Looking at the gilded token in front of him, Wang Ling's eyes suddenly widened. The gaze that fell on Beligaju also changed. That was because every educated person in the capital knew that the emperor had once given the third prince a gold medal. That gold medal not only symbolized the third prince's status, but also gave him a certain amount of authority. The words written on that gold medal were the words Imperial Presence. Chapter 693. Thump. Wang Ling immediately knelt on the ground. He was so nervous that he stuttered. Greetings to the royal family. When old lady Wang and Yin Lu heard what he said, they gasped in disbelief. This person was the third prince of the imperial court? Although old lady Wang did not kneel immediately, one could see the shock in her eyes. After Wang Ling knelt, Yin Lu kowtowed as well, her hands trembling. Beligaju's expression did not change. His elegant side profile was like a perfect ice sculpture, cold and indifferent. Helene Vivian's tone was calm. She glanced at the trembling Wang Ling. Is there anyone else who doubts our identity now? Wang Ling shook his head violently. He dared not speak anymore. As if he was still in the midst of this sudden shock. He did not make a sound for a long while. Since there are no more doubts, take them off. Helene Vivian looked at Wang Ling and Yin Lu. Both of them were stunned at the same time. Wang Ling was the first to move, followed by Yin Lu. Both of them did not reject each other. They were very cooperative when they took off their clothes. Helene Weiwei's eyes deepened and didn't say anything. She directly picked up the lit oil lamp on the wooden table and looked at it in front of her eyes. After that, she casually threw it onto the two wedding robes. Her movements were very nimble and didn't even give people a chance to regret. Wang Ling and Yin Lu were still kneeling on the ground. They were a distance away. They did not dare to raise their heads. Hearing the sudden sound of the fire so close at hand, his body trembled. Helene Vivian looked at them condescendingly, her thin lips curling slightly. Now that the wedding gowns are gone, you can't go back even if you want to. I'll give you two choices. 1, you come out yourself. I'll help you release your soul. 2, I'll drag you out and destroy your soul. Both of them did not respond. However, the malicious spirit hidden within laughed coldly. Annihilate it? What arrogance! Do you think I'm the same as a normal malicious spirit? It had seen how powerful the man was. It was indeed shocking. Until now, it still couldn't figure out the man's identity. But to it, no matter how powerful someone was, as long as they didn't destroy its territory, even if they left behind a little bit of resentment, it could come back to life. This woman was indeed smart. She knew to burn the wedding gown. But did she think that it couldn't tell? She didn't even know which one was it, so she said such harsh words to it. Humans. He was too full of himself. Soon, there was less than an hour left. If it hid well enough, it would not be able to escape. Half an hour later, all the ghosts would be gathered here. At that time, its resentment would infect all of them. Not only could they possess the bodies of humans, but they could also bring resentment with them to the underworld. Because today was the day of 10,000 yen. Among the ghosts gathered this time, there would be those who had just passed away. It was much easier for these undead spirits to enter the underworld compared to the previous ones. They were on the Book of Life and Death, and were summoned by the Netherworld operatives. There was no need for them to barge in, as the ghost servants would bring them into the underworld. As long as one of them could enter, one would spread to 10, 10 would spread to 100, and all the souls in the underworld would be infected. When the babies were born, all the pregnant women in the capital would give birth to evil spirits. When that day came, the seal would be broken, and the demons and ghosts imprisoned in the underworld would rush out of the ground. Humans, on the other hand, would become their food. The malicious spirit laughed softly. Its eyes, hidden in the darkness, glanced at Old Lady Wang. This old woman was useless. It originally thought that she was different from others. At least she was ruthless, but it didn't expect that she would be convinced. As expected of a human, even if she became a corpse, she was still weak. She wasn't worth its cooperation at all. Although it was personally made by it, such a low-energy corpse was not worthy of being its master. Kill her. Resentment emerged inch by inch from the bottom of its heart. The malicious spirit's face changed back and forth. One moment, it was Zhang Ling-er, and the next moment, it was Wang Wanshi. Those who were killed by Old Lady Wang all revealed unprecedented hatred. If it weren't for the Wang family, they wouldn't have died. They definitely wouldn't let these two people go. Why are you talking so much to him? Bailey Jiaju paced forward. His black boots with bright stirrups stepped on the ground. The sound was very deep and heavy. His walking posture was still very elegant. His thin lips carried an evil charm that was like a smile yet not a smile. In the depths of his eyes, there seemed to be a layer of ice. Kill both of them. There must be one. When Old Lady Wang heard this, her expression changed. Then, she stood in front of her son and knelt on the ground. She kowtowed a few times, and her forehead was full of blood. Your Highness, I beg you, don't kill my son. Didn't you just promise me that you wouldn't touch my son? Baligaju looked at her indifferently. The person who promised you was not me. Old Lady Wang didn't expect to hear this answer. Her entire body was paralyzed on the ground. Ling didn't do anything wrong. He might be possessed by a malicious spirit. If he doesn't die, more people will die. Baligaju's voice was calm as he interrupted her. There was no expression on his face. You were the one who made the wedding dress, so that your son could get married. Now that your son has worn the wedding dress, he has to pay the price. Isn't that fair? Old Lady Wang covered her face and cried bitterly. She really knew that she was wrong. She never thought that a wedding gown would harm her son. Was this the retribution that the heavens gave her? Old Lady Wang shook her head and looked at Hellion Vivian with tears in her eyes. She sobbed. I beg you, spare my son. I'm willing to do anything. I beg you. Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. Yen Luer seemed to be frightened. She suddenly distanced herself from Wang Ling. Wang Ling clenched his fists. His voice was also hoarse. Mother, don't be like this. Aling, my poor Aling. Following Old Lady Wang's cries of despair, the black fog in the sky thickened. A thunderclap sounded from the horizon without warning. The soldiers at the periphery were shocked. They looked at each other and touched the raindrops on their faces. There was an indescribable fear in their eyes. It wasn't only the officers surrounding the Wang family who were uneasy. Even the elderly on the streets were startled awake. Every door and window was shut tight. Those who carried their grandchildren covered their eyes, afraid that the children would see something unclean. After all, the elderly had lived longer than the young people. They were more knowledgeable. People always said that the plum rain season was an eventful season. It wasn't without reason. Moreover, it was winter now. It shouldn't rain in the first place. Chapter 694. It could be said that this was not a good sign in itself. Whether it was entering tombs to steal treasures or exorcising ghosts, the biggest taboo was a rainy day. This was because there was energy in the water. It was very likely to cause a zombie to mutate. At this time, the King of Hell, who had originally said that he would close the gates of the underworld 3 days later, issued an order. If the rain did not stop, the gates of the underworld must be closed at midnight. When the little King of Hell heard this, he slapped the book of life and death in his hand. Old man, are you playing with me? The King of Hell hated it when people called him old. He gripped the teacup in his hand and his face darkened. I think you're itching for a beating again. From today onwards, you're not allowed to take a single step out of hell. You're forcing me to run away from home. The little King of Hell had 2 horns on his head, and a death symbol was printed on the corner of his handsome mouth. Do you think I like hell so much? I'm going to the human world now. Little Hook is still waiting for me in the human world. The king of hell sneered. Didn't they kick you back last time? Why would they wait for you? Isn't it time for you to wake up from your daydream? Old man, seeing that you're my father, I'll bear with you this time. The little king of hell lifted the huge black axe and prepared to jump to the human world. Unfortunately, his skills were inferior. After jumping for a long time, he still could not jump out of this small place. The little king of hell turned around and looked at his father. If you're so capable, let go of me. I'll fight you one-on-one. Why should I fight you one-on-one? You're asking for a beating. Keep quiet for a while, you brat. The king of hell also had a headache. This brat thought that he wanted to close the gates of hell. It was all because he saw that the situation was not right. If something really sneaked in, it would be more troublesome to deal with when the time comes. It was obvious that the king of hell was an impatient person. He casually threw the little king of hell onto a chair and continued to instruct the judges. They had to match the names and dates of death of all the people in the book of life and death before midnight. The little king of hell saw that he was busy and secretly glanced at the two-headed dog behind him. That was the pet that followed the little king of hell all year round. The two-headed hound was busy with a ball. When they saw their master looking at them, they stopped playing. One of the heads said, "Lao air, why did the little master call us over? He definitely wants us to untie him." The other head said proudly, its chest puffed out as it waited for the little king of hell's praise. But its voice and movements were too loud. Not only the busy king of hell, but even the judges looked at the little king of hell. The little king of hell cursed under his breath and held his forehead with his small hand. Why did he raise such a stupid dog? It was even stupider than a husky. There was no other way. Even if he knew that his father would fly into a rage after hearing what he said, he still had to say it. Old man, do you still remember the great devil who used to be on par with you? He's still alive. I've seen him. In fact, his father had never beaten him. He said this because he didn't want his father to be too agitated. Sure enough, the king of hell pushed the judge in front of him away, his eyes spitting fire. Where is that bastard? The little king of hell replied coolly, "Why should I tell you?" The king of hell narrowed his eyes, and an amber golden light overflowed. Do you think you can threaten me like this? Anyway, he's getting more and more handsome. The king of hell's son pretended to be nonchalant and said, "If mom sees him, she'll definitely abandon you completely." Did you forget how mom praised him back then? She said that he was like a god from the ninth heaven, that he had a demonic nature, but he could be as gentle as water. Sigh, a person's temperament is the most important thing. Dad, I'm not trying to discourage you, but although you're good-looking, the violent and loyal dog type is no longer popular nowadays. You need to be gentle and elegant, but you don't have any of those qualities. Whoosh. The little king of hell's words immediately poked the king of hell's sore spot. Tell me where he is, and I'll let you go to the human world to see your little Hook. The king of hell couldn't tolerate a man who was praised by his wife the most. He would definitely kill all of them. The little king of hell seized the opportunity and clapped his paws. Deal. The father and son made a deal. One of them went to the palace with a murderous aura. The other used the two-headed dog and quickly locked onto the position of the wolf dog beside Hellion Vivian. Then, he bent down and landed on the roof of the Wong family. At this moment, Hellion Vivian's eyes also darkened because of the sudden rain. When the little king of hell saw her, he immediately jumped into the courtyard. Woman! Hellion Vivian looked at the vicious little boy in front of her and raised her eyebrows. Why are you here? I'm here to tell you that my father is preparing to close the path of reincarnation in advance. Fortunately, he's a jealous person. When he heard the name of the great demon, he put down everything and rushed to the palace. Hellion Vivian listened silently. She couldn't help but look back at Beligaju. His Highness had a perfect and handsome face. The moonlight and rain were nothing to him. He didn't even take the little king of hell's words to heart. But, Your Highness, what did you do? How could you make the king of hell lose his mind in an instant and come to the human world to hunt you down? Hellion Vivian didn't doubt his Highness' ability to attract hatred at all. But he himself had never cared about it. It was quite sad to be his Highness' enemy. But the little king of hell continued, he has always been fast. If he can't find the great demon in the palace, he will immediately continue with the plan to close the path of reincarnation. The judges are ready now. When it's midnight, the gates of the underworld will be closed. Unless the rain can stop, the people of the underworld won't be able to find out which souls have resentment. So they can only use such an extreme method. Hellion Vivian frowned. She didn't blame the little king of hell for suddenly going back on his words. She knew that closing the underworld was considered for the overall situation. It was also the most effective way to control the scope of the infection so far. Unless the source of the infection was immediately destroyed, the path of reincarnation would really be closed. Hellion Vivian turned around and looked at Yin Lu and Wang Ling. Then, she narrowed her eyes and slowly walked toward Wang Ling. If that's the case, we can't waste any more time. At this moment, the corners of the malicious spirit's mouth that was buried under his long hair slowly curled up. There was a strangeness that didn't belong to humans. It knew that no matter how smart a person was, they would always overlook harmless weaklings. Moreover, it had already created some confusion with its plan. It was only at the moment when it burned the wedding dress that it chose this person. Chapter 695. No! Old Lady Wang's begging turned into a roar. Wang Ling closed his eyes, waiting for Hellion Vivian's dagger to fall. The evil spirit lowered its head and laughed, the curve of its lips getting wider. As long as they did not kill it now, they would all die in a while. Very well, let everything end like this. However, out of everyone's expectations, Hellion Vivian suddenly turned around, and a few swishing sounds could be heard. Yen Luer, who was initially hesitant, was suddenly surrounded by daggers. Those daggers were different from the others. They emitted a faint Buddhist light, as if they could trap something. Yen Luer widened her eyes, big drops of tears fell, and her voice trembled. This is? Are you still going to pretend? Hellion Vivian twirled the last dagger in her hand. A black dog vaguely stood in front of her left. Yen Luer shrunk her shoulders. My lady, I don't know what you're talking about, pretend? I'm not pretending. As she spoke, she looked at Beligaju and begged pitifully. Your Highness, I really don't know anything, I beg you please save me. You don't know anything? Hellion Weiwei smiled faintly as she walked towards her. She was 2 steps away from her and said, You haven't come close to my front left since just now. You've been looking over here vigilantly. Actually, you're not hiding from Wang Ling. You're hiding from Blackie. The aura of resentment here is too strong. Xiao He can't confirm your aura, but your actions have explained everything. You're afraid of Xiao He. Yen Luer cried more and more pitifully, her tears blurred. Ever since I was caught by old Lady Wang, I was in a daze. Now I'm scared even if there's a slight movement. It's not because of the Xiao He that you're talking about. My lady, have you ever been caught? Do you understand that feeling? I thought I was dead for sure. I never thought that Ling, and the others were taken away by old Lady Wang, who lived next door to my house. I also never thought that she would ignore my wishes and make me the daughter-in-law of the Wang family. When I saw those corpses, my heart turned cold. I desperately wanted to call for help, but old Lady Wang had drugged the tea. Other than feeling weak, I only felt despair. Even Wang Ling could only be his mother's helper. I didn't expect that they would repay my kindness with such ingratitude, even though I had helped them so much. Now, my lady, you're pointing a dagger at me? My lady, aren't you afraid of retribution? I'm not afraid. Hellion Weiwei lazily dug her ears and said in a calm voice. Because you didn't act like someone who had been surprised. I suspected you from the beginning. Under normal circumstances, people who were kidnapped would act after they were rescued. This is because people's subconscious actions are usually faster than their thinking, such as grabbing the rescuer's hand or jumping into their arms. Under such circumstances, people would not consider the difference between a man and a woman. I was very close to you at that time, but you didn't approach me. Instead, you shifted your attention to old Lady Wang at the first moment. This didn't seem like the behavior of someone who had just been rescued. Instead, it seemed like you reacted after thinking about it. Yen Luer's eyes were red, as if she had been wronged. You said that I reacted after thinking. Then what about Wang Ling? He refused to take off his wedding clothes from the start. Isn't that more suspicious? Yen Luer's voice was very hoarse. She cried after she finished speaking. If anyone else saw her like this, they would definitely feel that this girl was very pitiful. However, it was a pity that the person she was facing was Hellion Vivian. As the person involved, you should know better than me why Wang Ling refused to take off his wedding clothes. Did you think that I wouldn't have thought that the aura of resentment would shift according to one's will? If I'm not wrong, before the wedding clothes were burned, you could have shifted at will. You're very smart. You know how to use your advantages. Once you heard that I wanted to investigate you, you immediately started to create chaos. You, who had already possessed Yen Luer's body, separated a part of your aura of resentment to influence Wang Ling. But your real body had always been in Yen Luer's body. When Wang Ling spoke, my suspicion of you was immediately shifted to him. You've achieved your goal. Although the wedding clothes were burned, it would affect a part of your aura of resentment. But as long as your real body was protected, absorbing the aura of resentment would be a piece of cake for you. Yen Luer's eyes were red, her hands hidden in her long sleeves clenched. You want to kill me based on these guesses? Have you ever thought that what if you've killed the wrong person? There's no what if, you're that malicious spirit. Hellion Vivian's thin lips curled into a meaningful smile. I'm guessing that from the moment Yen Luer put on her wedding clothes, you've already infiltrated her body. Once the ceremony was over, you'd be able to completely invade her body. No matter what we do, we won't be able to expel you. Old Lady Wang had killed quite a number of people, but none of the girls caught her eye, so you didn't have the chance to possess any of them. When Yen Luer finally appeared, of course you'd act immediately, but you didn't expect this rare opportunity to be interrupted. You could only use the method of possession to stay in Yen Luer's body, then hide behind the bed curtain and observe our every move. When I was talking to Old Lady Wang in the beginning, I noticed the bed curtain behind her. I thought it was because something was hidden inside that caused the deformation of the bed curtain. But now I realize that it wasn't because something was hidden inside. It was because you were standing there and listening to our conversation. At this point, Hellion Vivian paused, his eyes filled with malice. And you've just admitted it yourself. You said that you were drugged by Old Lady Wang, and it was difficult for you to even call for help. That means that the drug you've been drugged with will cause your limbs to become weak, and your voice to become muted for a long time. However, you don't look like you've been drugged at all. I didn't know about this at first, but now that you've said it, I'm even more certain that you're that malicious spirit. At that moment, Yen Luer's body froze. Then she laughed out loud, her face filled with indescribable madness. I never thought that there would be such a smart person among the humans. But do you think you can get rid of me with brute force? If not for the exorcising tribe, even the king of hell wouldn't be able to do anything to me. If you're so capable, kill this girl as well. Chapter 696. Don't think that I don't know that you can't do anything to this girl. The evil spirit held the side of its face with one hand. A demonic red light shone from its left eye, causing its entire face to become abnormally fearful. It, who was originally kneeling, now stood up straight. Its voice grew colder as it laughed. You want to destroy me with just these human weapons? Haha, dream on. Even if you know a little bit of magic, don't think that you can subdue me. The evil spirit's plan was very good, but what it did not expect was that after hearing its words, the other party did not panic at all. Instead, the other party looked at it calmly and asked, "Do you think that's just an ordinary dagger?" What do you mean? Just as the evil spirit finished its sentence, a layer of Buddha's light rose around it. The Buddha's light was like a shield, firmly covering it in the middle. Hellion Weiwei smiled faintly. You are an evil spirit formed by the accumulation of resentment. If even a little bit of resentment leaks out, you will be resurrected. To avoid future troubles, of course, we have to cut off your connection with the outside world first. Although I don't know how to use yellow talismans to exorcise demons, I know the principle. These daggers have been soaked in incense from the temple. It shouldn't be a problem to cut off your resentment. However, it does take some time for them to connect with each other. I have to thank you for cooperating with me just now. You were attracting my attention just now. The evil spirit suddenly understood. The expression on its face became even more vicious. You have already made up your mind to attack me. You damned woman. The evil spirit struggled, wanting to pounce towards Hellion Vivian. However, the Buddha's light that came from all directions prevented it from going up to the sky or down to the ground. Even the resentment that was released from its eyes could not be released. Instead, it gathered deeper and deeper, redder and redder. Yin Luer's face turned into Zhang Linger's face, then into another girl's face. Each face looked extremely terrifying. You are the same as that pair of mother and son. Both of you are heartless. What did we do wrong? Why should we be treated like this? They are the murderers, but you are punishing us. What kind of justice is this? It's just an excuse that humans find for their hypocrisy. The screams of the malicious ghosts stirred up a whirlwind in the surroundings. The souls that had drifted over from the gates of hell began to gather in the dark clouds above the Wang family manor. Not good. The king of hell's son, who was carrying a black axe, furrowed his brows as he stared at the dark clouds. The surrounding ghosts have heard its grievance and are starting to change. Hellion Vivian glanced at him. Then you're not going to stop it? We of the underworld are not like you humans. We do things with principles. The little king of hell smiled viciously. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. As long as the dead spirits are taking revenge, and don't involve the innocent, we have no right to stop them. Hellion Vivian stopped talking to little king of hell. Instead, she turned to old lady Wang and said, "You've heard him. A life for a life. Do you want to deal with this yourself, or should I?" With tears in her eyes, old lady Wang said, "Sir, please do it." "No, don't kill my mother," Wang Ling shouted. Hellion Vivian didn't hesitate and kicked him to the side. "What right do you have to say no? Do you think you're not wrong? Although you didn't kill her, if you were a little more capable and didn't always blame others, things wouldn't have come to this. You'd better not provoke me. Otherwise, I might not be able to control myself and beat a phoenix scumbag like you to death." Do you think you're the only one who's a treasure? When you heard those girls' screams just now, don't you feel any remorse? Wang Ling listened to Hellion Vivian's words and knelt down. "I know I was wrong. I'll be a good person in the future. It doesn't matter to them who you become. What's important is very simple. A life for a life. You say you'll be a good person now. But who gave these girls a chance to be good people? Besides, there are innocent people among them. And some of them are even indebted to you. Get out of the way, don't make me cut you." Hellion Wei had always done things this way. Not to mention that most of the girls who died later on were innocent. She had to seek justice for them. This way, the connection between the evil spirit and the surrounding wrong spirits would disappear. She knew that time was of the essence, but not until the last moment. She didn't want to use the most extreme method to make those girls vanish into thin air. She wanted to release their souls. In this world there was a lot of love. Even though she hadn't experienced much of it since she was young, she had seen her mother's depression after learning that her father had cheated on her. But she could never forget how her mother knitted a sweater for her before she fell ill. When she was very young, she even thought that it would be great if there were ghosts in this world. If there were ghosts, those evil people would get what they deserved. For example, that mistress, or her heartless father. He was with her mother for his career and money. He didn't deny that they once had love and swore to be together. In the end, the mistress entered the game. In order to be able to work together openly, they forced her mother to death and stole all the inheritance that her mother left for her. Why didn't such a person die? Why was the love that the mistress said so ridiculous? The most ridiculous thing was that they could be forgiven after crying a few times. Some people even felt proud of it instead of ashamed. Then, did they ever think about what would happen to those who were forced to death? What would happen to the relatives of the deceased? Should they be ignored just because they couldn't speak again? When the old lady heard Hellion Vivian's words, she wiped away the tears in her eyes and pushed Wang Ling away. Son, this lady is right. We have committed a crime, and we should atone for it. After I die, go to the entrance of the alley and ask for punishment. You don't have to care about the Zhang family. Old Madame Zhang treated us so well, and I've already repaid her daughter with my life. You don't have to do anything else. The Lin family only has one daughter. Old Madame Lin is old and can't walk properly. You just stay by his side and serve him. If he wants to hit you, just bear with it. This is what we should do. Mother, I understand. I understand. I'll be a good person in the future. Wang Ling cried as well. In the beginning, he didn't feel much guilt, and only hoped that the other party would spare them. After all, the Zhang family was involved in this matter. But now that his mother was about to die, he truly felt remorseful. Helly and Vivian moved quickly. After listening to their discussion, the silver dagger pierced through old Madame Wang's chest. Old Lady Wang was already dead. What Helly and Wei Wei was doing now was to let everything return to dust and return to earth. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.